She asked me if I do this every day. I said often. That's how many times she rode the wave. Not so often. Baby, it's down to do it either way. Often, baby, I can make that rain. Often, often, girl, I do this often. Make that pop, pop. Do it how I want. Often, often, girl, I do this often. Make that pop, pop. Do it how I want. Ooh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, na na na. Na na na, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, na na na, na na na, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, na na na, na na na, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah, na na na. She asked me if I do this every day. I said often. How many times she rode the wave? Not so often. It is down to do it either way. Often, baby, I can make that rain. Often, often, girl, I do this often. Make that pop, pop, do it how I want. Often, often, girl, I do this often. Make that pop, pop, do it how I want. If I do this every day, I said often. How many times you walk away, not so often. It's time to do it either way. Often, baby, I can make that pop, pop, do it how I want. Often, often, girl, I do this often. Make that pop, pop, do it how I want.
All right. Hi, I'm Hunter Dunn. I'm 5051's National Press Coordinator, and I'm here with our team to help break down the election results as we see them in West Virginia and in Nebraska. Now, of course, West Virginia, some of the ballots are already have been counted and have been reported. Most races are still too close to call, but we do know that Capito, who is the current Republican incumbent in the West Virginian Senate, has been nominated by the Republican Party to run again in the general, so she has not been successfully primaried. Most of the rest of the major races, which we're watching, including the Democratic primary and the Dem primaries in Districts 1 and District 2 of West Virginia, have not been called at this time. Now, Nebraska polls are still open for the next 20 minutes until 7 p.m. Mountain Time / 8 p.m. Central Time. So we will not have those out yet. To be honest, those are probably the more interesting races. But we have a couple interesting things to highlight. But before we get into that, I should also introduce my co-host tonight.
I think that might be me. Hello, people. I'm just around to help with any results that may come in, and yep.
Yeah. Hieramius, if I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Actually, do you want to start talking about some of the results that we already have from the major West Virginia races?
Yes, we actually have a victory, but that's for Republican primary. Apparently, the Senator Sally Moore Capito has won the Republican Senate primary in West Virginia. She has Trump's endorsement and faced 5 primary challengers, and she is heavily favored to win a third term this fall. Um, in the uh, in the Democrat side, Rachel Anderson is currently leading with 15,282 votes. That's 37.5% of vote, compared to Jeffrey Kessler, 10,648 votes, 26.1% of vote. And finally, Zachary Shrewsbury is 6,019 votes and 14.8% of the vote, with 51.3% of the expected votes in. And I just, and if I may actually interrupt myself, because more votes have come in. Rachel Anderson has dropped down, I believe, 1 percentage point. She's currently at 37.4% of the vote, 15,360 votes, followed by Jeffrey Kessler with 26% of votes, 10,765 votes. It keeps updating as I keep speaking, so I might not be as fast as compared to our news sources, but yeah, let's move to the House for a brief moment because we have for the West Virginia Democratic House primary, District 1. Fee George is currently leading with 53.9% of vote, 9,017 votes. And Britta Aguirre with 77,703 votes, 46.1% of the vote. And in District 2, with 58.1% of votes in, Ace Parsi has 10,419 votes, 43.3%. Stephanie Tormana has 9,242 votes, 48.4% of vote. And Stephen Wendelin has 4,470 votes, 18.3% of vote, with again 58.5% of expected votes now in. That's all for West Virginia.
Yes. Now, interesting thing to highlight, of course, is that even though Capito has won the nomination and had Trump's endorsement, this was yet another example of a somewhat minor but still notable civil war within the Republican Party. As one of her opponents, I believe State Senator Tom Willis, by maybe butchering his name there, had amongst his endorsements the endorsement of the West Virginian Senate president, which means that there was a bit of a back and forth going on. Of course, they were both coming at it from the one true MAGA angle, right? Criticizing each other's records for not being conservative enough. So it's not exactly a fracture going in a direction we want it to go, but nonetheless, it is reassuring to see that right wing infighting exists, and it's not just us on the left wing all yelling at each other while the right wingers march together to victory. They have almost as much infighting as we do, which is shocking for anyone who's ever been on a left wing social media community. When it comes to some of the other races, as Hire was talking about, in West Virginia, we have an interesting situation with the Senate primary. And the reason for this is that, normally speaking, when I'm coming into a race, I'm usually looking at a couple of policies, which we can get into later, but I call it the New Deal Dem framework. But there's a bit of a problem there in that the guy running on the closest to that framework, Zach Shrewsbury, the most progressive candidate, is only at 15%. And the reason behind that has probably very little to do with policy and a lot more to do with scandals. So, unless something massively changes, as Hieramius was covering, it's probably a two-man race, two-person race between Rachel Anderson and Jeffrey Kessler at this time. And between the two of them, Anderson has under her belt some support for, just going to double check myself here, um, a few levels of the platforms, including trying to help fight back against corporations, more equitable marginal income tax brackets, and just trying to make things more affordable generally. But she's not exactly coming out there as a progressive world beater. But Kessler is even more moderate, at least based on their platforms and the discussions around them. Higher, are there any races that interest you at the either the House and Senate level or even some of the local races?
It's interesting for the Republican side because you mentioned Tom Lewis has the endorsement of the West Virginia the Republican Senate, I believe. And looking at the results, he only has 17% of the vote. And as I mentioned before, Senator Capito has the endorsement of Donald Trump. And she has 67.8% of the vote, 32,781 votes right now. So it's a little interesting. I believe she might be an incumbent as well, which might help her out in this scenario. But
Yes, she is, which helps her a
yeah,
lot.
so 67% compared to Tom Lewis, and I'm not necessarily surprised about that.
Yeah, it's not exactly close, but it is interesting that despite the large disparity um, between the two of them, that there was such a infighting. Usually, you don't see that with Republican contestants. Like, for example, when we did see that in the Indiana primaries last week, that was because Indiana refused to go forward with their own version of the racist gerrymanders that we are seeing taking place across the country. Right after the gutting of the Voting Rights Act by the United States Supreme Court, we've seen a rush of decisions by reactionary Supreme Courts and at the state level, but more importantly, mid-decade racial gerrymandering power grabs by governors like Ron DeSantis and most damningly the Louisiana government, which straight up suspended their elections that were supposed to be on May 16th. We're actually going to have a guest from a member of the 5051 network in Louisiana on shortly to discuss voter suppression in Louisiana, what they're doing to fight back, what 5051 and members of the No Kings Coalition are doing to fight back, and what voting in Louisiana and these states where elections are postponed, suspended, or canceled may look like. Because, of course, we're seeing that, and we're also seeing this absurd election integrity push. But something interesting I do want to highlight is the race in specifically when it comes to West Virginia. I'm trying to make sure I'm on the right House district. The race between in District 1. Can you pull up the results for that right now?
I also got that on my screen as well. Uh, with Britta Aguirre, because we have her, I believe, at 6.5 out of 7 in terms of our renewed deal ranking. She's currently at 47.5% of votes, so it's a bit close with 48.5% of the expected vote in. So it's it, it's interesting.
Yeah. The reason why this is fascinating to me is because when you look at Aguirre and Vince George's positions, Aguirre is incredibly, incredibly progressive by comparison. And despite it being a very red state, where the only Democrat you've ever heard of that has represented them in the past decade and a half is, of course, Joe Manchin, who was most known for being the having the title of most frustrating Democrat in the House, which has since sorry in the Senate, which has since been usurped by John Fetterman after the brain damage and after Manchin decided not to run for Congress again. Nonetheless, the race is extremely close, of a difference of just about 1,000 votes, which is less than 6%. While at the same time, Aguirre is supporting policies like abolishing ICE instituting Medicare for all, universal health care, public option, not Medicare for all. I misspoke. Trying to remove the regime and hold them accountable, trying to end Citizens United to get dark money out of politics, standing up against the endless wars and the military industrial complex that we're seeing in the United States. That is, of course, supporting genocidal partners and enabling human rights abuses across the world, and at the same time is trying but at the same time not just supporting an end to those endless wars, but supporting a reversal of the cuts to USAID and other programs that were actually helping make the world and thereby Americans safer through soft power and through lifting each other up, creating better living conditions for all people in the entire world. And of course, standing up against the oligarchy, the billionaires that are trying to hollow out her country to line their own pocketbooks and bribing politicians to do so. She favors increasing the marginal tax rate for them and closing tax loopholes that have allowed billionaires to get away with not paying their fair share. She's also, supporting. I also gave her a point for what I call building a better tomorrow, which is a mixture of supporting housing initiatives, but also more importantly, covering local issues and meeting the people of her district where they are at. Let me pull up some examples on what she is running on there. Require. Um, she is running on. I mean, her explicit slogan is "People over profit," right? But we're looking at taking steps to help fight back against opioid addiction and other addiction, better pay and support for teachers, and doing what they can to improve the West Virginian public education system, which has been horrendously neglected by the Republicans in power, to put it lightly, and trying to provide full mental health access to universal health care, so mental health and substance use treatment, and in addition, protecting workers' rights and fair pay, while at the same time attracting economic investment into rural West Virginia, right? Which is looking at things like making sure broadband access and other similar policies, and even helping set up some trade skills pathways that would be government supported to make it easier for people to earn a living without having to go through the exact same pathway that everyone else goes through. Contrast that with Vince George, who's running a pretty bog standard platform. Out of those 7 policies I covered, he only got 1 full point. And if I'm correct, I believe off the top of the head, it had to do with ending Citizens United. But I would have to double check that. At the same time, despite it being a very, very, very progressive, if not a leftist candidate running against a modern candidate in one of the reddest areas in the country, we're looking at less than a 6% difference, and the race is too close to call. So here's to hoping that Aguirre, who is endorsed by Track APAC, for those of you keeping score, is able to pull it out in the end.
I actually have Finch George's website up right now, and it seems he's more, he's definitely anti-ICE, but he's more like he's definitely boilerplate. He does mention like ending forever wars, quote, reducing our military budget by even one.
That was the actual one. It was that was a weird one, right? It was ending forever wars.
Yeah.
You're right. He is very much of like that threw me off. I was trying to remember. I was like, it's got to be remove the regime, but my brain totally brain farted there because you're right. The actual one he was standing up against was the trying to reduce the military budget slightly, which is fascinating. Sorry, keep going.
No, I mean, beyond ending forever wars and immigration stuff, it's a bit like standard. He believes in the free market that allows renewable energy to expand in West Virginia. That's what this is want to do. Um, he's fighting for policies that increase mine safety, support miners of black lung, and hold powerful coal companies accountable for harm they do to working class West Virginians. Keep in mind, this is a state that's like very mountainous, very like rural, and definitely big in the money sphere. So uh, it's interesting. It's kind of boilerplate, but like you said, it's kind of the any forever wars part is kind of throwing me off a little bit too. We might want to rank him like 1.5, maybe, maybe.
Well, I was giving him the point. I think I was giving half a point on the endless wars and another half a point on the he's got some like term limit support. So I was giving him the 0.5 on the remove the regime point because he is calling for ending forever wars, but he's not being too specific on what he means. I can assume Iran, right? But I can't find a single statement of his on Gaza or Israel or Palestine, or I can't even find much on Ukraine or any other major conflicts going on. So I assume that has to go back to specifically Iran. But it is fascinating to see a much more boilerplate candidate, as you said, running on a we're going to reduce the military budget and we're going to end forever wars. It's like, okay, who kidnapped? Did PSL kidnap you and knock you over the head a couple times? Like, I'm not complaining if they did. Good on them. But I'm just like, where is that language coming from, right? It's like, I believe in liberalism. I believe in fraternity and equality. I want to have minor tax credit changes to help benefit people who have a third child living in a two-bedroom house in one specific district in Pennsylvania, right? Very boilerplate language, doing very minor liberal changes. But also, we are going to abolish all debt for everyone ever. Like that, like that's kind of what he's doing there, right? Like out of nowhere, he just
Yeah.
starts. It's like Tucker Carlson on Fox News back in the day when he would like say a bunch of crazy far right stuff, but then out of nowhere, you'd hear the Soviet Union music start playing, and he would start saying it's not about race, it's about class, it's about the people at the top trying to get you to fight each other, and it's like, what happened here? Like, who you're cooking, you are cooking, but why are you specifically cooking? And like that's
Well,
sort of
well,
the fundamental problem there,
it
right?
it does say on his website that he does come from a military family myself, so maybe that could be it. He has relatives who served, who might have PTSD, who might have seen war itself and the consequences of it. I mean, when you have a relative like that, that's probably gonna stick. It's definitely sticking here.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, like, that's what's really interesting, though. It's because, like, you wouldn't expect someone like that to have that stance. Like, normally, it's rare for a veteran to be running on a very specific cut the military budget campaign unless they're like a Grant Plattner or Dylan Blaha or Demi Palachek or other people who are like running a almost DSA esque campaign. And not only is he not running one, he's running against someone who like borderline is in Aguirre. Again, if you're seeking out and getting a track APAC endorsement, you know exactly which audience you're playing to, right? Um, but at the same time, it's like, what are we doing here, right? Like what's happening? what what is happening here? And it's very fascinating. And we probably should go over real quick to, and I'm trying to fact check myself on this one specific issue because I want to make sure I'm giving our audience the most accurate information um, from. Okay, hold on. Um, okay, does this have the transcript? And then what if there is a. Okay, hold on. Um, hmm. Okay, I can't seem to find his position on this issue at all. But I was gonna say in District 2, I think that there's a clear New Deal Dem option as well. And looking at Okay, Kessler keeps on gaining on Rachel Anderson in the Senate race, which is interesting. Nothing major, it's still over a 10% gap. But right now we have in District 2, 73.6% in. It's sort of a two-man race between Parsi and Tamana. Of the two of them, Tamana, she's a school teacher. She's actually running on a couple of pretty great issues, including trying to expanding the child tax credit. She's trying to close loopholes for corporate tax so they can't zero out their federal income tax anymore, and at the same time is encouraging a more fair taxation system to not just like on one end strengthening collective bargaining, supporting working families with infrastructure and access, raising the minimum wage, protecting gig workers, incentivizing local investment to sort of raise the floor, and then on the same side, sort of closing the ceiling by stopping stopping the zeroing out of federal income taxes for corporations, while at the same time supporting Overturning Citizens United and taking some similar stances. So she's actually doing a pretty good job on the New Deal Dem side. She's got almost half credit there. But and Parsi has like one or two. But compare that with Steve Wendland, who is behind at just under 20%. And Commander Stephen Wendland, also a veteran, is has a 5.5 out of 7 according to my own ranking. I can't find his position on abolishing ICE, so I had to give him a 0 there. But he's running on a public option for universal health care. He's running on removing the regime, has some incredibly specific and strong language, is supporting the overturning Citizens United, has very specific language about ending endless wars and making sure that all of our partners are upholding international law for providing them any benefits whatsoever. Corporate and wealth taxes to make billionaires pay. Sorry, but wealth taxes in this case, I mean more like the increase in marginal tax rates, and running on providing both infrastructure improvements, handling addiction, but also building affordable housing. So he is running on a pretty New Deal Dem platform himself, but he is, however, behind Tomana and Parsi, whose campaign websites both do seem like they have quite a bit more funding in their race. I'd actually be curious if we have any donation listings. We can see how much money that the all three of them are playing with.
I
Do you
tried
want to
to
pull that up?
I
See if we
tried
can
to
find
check.
fundraising. Sorry, what are you saying?
I was gonna mention I pulled up Steve Wendland's website and he only mentions like immigration twice. So and nothing specifically on ICE. I'll try to see if
Yeah,
I
he
can
does not.
find something, but
He's got a pretty good platform, but at the same time, he's running because he's got like the Repeal Citizens United, very specific, limiting campaign. He actually wants to go even further, limiting campaign contributions so people actually live in the district, which doesn't really move the needle for me. But the Citizens United point is pretty much a yes no. But he's trying to ban stock trading by members of Congress, term limits for Congress. He's running for corporate penalties. He's actually wants to, if a giant corporation has full-time workers qualifying for SNAP, or Medicaid, they're going to get corporate penalties for it, which is a pretty specific. He also wants to ban stock buybacks, which is a fantastic policy. Ronald Reagan allowed for stock buybacks in the 80s, and that's part of the reason why we're in the situation we're in now. When you look at the repealing the end of the Glass-Steagall Act and the allowing of stock buybacks, that sort of created the situation that allowed for the rise of neoliberal capitalism, which then leads to the housing speculation markets in the 2000s, which leads to the Wall Street crash in 2008, which leads to the need for Occupy Wall Street, which of course does gets some work towards a higher minimum wage, but doesn't succeed at getting the other goals. And as we watch the continued trudge from neoliberal capitalism to capitalist realism to the fall of American democracy, if left unabated, and one step to fix that would be to explicitly ban corporation stock buybacks so that the profits can actually be invested into either the workers or into infrastructure instead of into the shareholders' pockets. So that's actually a pretty fascinating um, policy to run on, especially in West Virginia. And he's running on the universal health care, fully funded broadband, which is a big deal in these districts. He's got at the same time trying to give the Environmental Protection Act teeth, and is running for a wealth tax on ultra millionaires and closing corporate loopholes. And I'm going to find the
I should let you know that it's currently 9:03. I believe the Nebraska polls should have closed by now, so we should get results pretty shortly in terms of any races in Nebraska.
yeah. We should be getting those Nebraska results shortly. But before we do, we should probably bring on one of our guests for tonight. If you're ready for that, Haramis. And
I'm ready.
yeah, I know our guest is in the green room, but I want to make sure that they're good. If I can get a thumbs up or down. Heck yeah.
There we go.
Uh, yeah. All right. Going to let our OBS operator know that we're going to be bringing on our guest from Louisiana to talk about Louisiana voter suppression, talk about what is happening with the primary that's supposed to be happening on May 16th. And I have the go ahead from our OBS operator. So thank you to our amazing, wonderful tech team. I'm sure it would shock people to find out that the 5051 movement, who is definitely not a too online grassroots movement that started on social media or anything, has a pretty good digital and tech team. I'm sure that's really shocking to everyone in the audience. So, uh, for those who aren't shocked and aren't stunned into silence by that and can still process the words that I'm saying, I'm going to introduce Lilith, who can talk to you guys about the organization she is part of and what they're doing to stand up and fight back against these mid-decade racist power grabs by red governors and red state governments like the one in Louisiana.
Hey everyone. I'm from the Resistance. We are a grassroots movement that is also part of 5051. Actually, everyone's angry around here, to be honest. Um, Elections were suspended before they were supposed to be doing early voting, but doing mail-in voting. And on 60 Minutes, actually, Jeff Landry said they're just going to discard all the mail-in ballots. So the original primary election was supposed to be May 16th. That's been suspended till at least November, depending on if they can draw the maps or not. There is a recall going on for Jeff Landry, and there's a website to show the locations, how often they're doing it. I think they're doing it like every day, and it's all across the state. And from what I understand is that they've already gotten 200,000 signatures. And all we need is about 500,000. And our deadline is October. So I think we're doing pretty okay.
Yeah. Wait, how many signatures do you guys have already?
Like 200,000.
So you guys are almost halfway there if it really is
Yes.
just
And it
500,000
just started
signatures.
last Monday.
Okay, so in a week and some change, it has
Yes.
been 8 days. I mean, okay, you guys gotta get faster at that. Allegedly that Jesus guy resurrected in 3 days. If he can bring someone back to life in three, I feel like you can get 500,000 segment. I'm kidding. That's
No, you're
that's a
right. You're
fantastic
right.
number. That's a fantastic number in 8 days. But let's get those numbers up. They're certainly not rookie numbers, but they need to get them up. Did you actually have a chance to vote before the elections got suspended, or did you
No.
talk to anyone who had already sent in their ballots?
I have talked to a couple people and they have gone to the Capitol both times where they've been doing the congressional session. They actually rescheduled the session that was supposed to be tomorrow till today to try and get people not to show up to protest. And they're just angry. They don't want their votes discarded because obviously it counts.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense that there's already rapid response protests happening. Are you guys part of the what's it called? All roads lead to the South, National Weekend of Action? Are you guys taking part in some of those protests either in
Um,
Louisiana or in Alabama this over the next couple days?
I don't know if any of the chapters are going to be a part of it, but I know that I'm going to be attending just as an attendee.
Absolutely. Let me pull up actually for those who I'm trying to find the page for the All Roads Lead to the South National Day of Action. I'm gonna give this to the. I'm gonna pull up the one from the Black Power War Room because I think they have a good link for it. But if someone's got a better link, please can drop that in our one of our secret special chats, and I'm going to be like mods, drop it in the Twitch chat. Uh, there's going to be a large national day of action protesting the dismantling the Voting Rights Act and the not just capitulation, but the eager embracing by red state governments of an opportunity to dilute the power of black and brown voters, to try to make sure that even though we all have an equal right to vote, that we don't have a right to an equal vote, taking every step that they can because they are afraid of a country where everyone has an equal say in their elected representatives because if everyone has an equal say, then they don't have much of a chance of protecting their mega billionaire donors, who are the ones that are hollowing out this country to make an extra buck. So when we're looking at that, we are looking at protests, for example, on May 15th. There's going to be large protests in Florida, in Tallahassee, I believe specifically, but there might be some protests in other parts of the state. And then on May 16th, a bunch of them are going to go from Florida to Alabama to support the All Roads Lead to the South action in Alabama, in, I think it's Selma. It's either Selma or Montgomery. Let me check. Yep, it starts in Selma at 9 a.m. The moral moment. Nope, it is both Selma and Montgomery. There's a moral moment for faith leaders at 9 a.m. in Selma on May 16th, and followed by a rally at 1 p.m. in Montgomery. So it's in both places. And people are coming from not just across the South, but I know that there's some buses coming down from Ohio that are planning on being there for the day of action. So there's sort of a larger weekend of action happening across the country, with the largest protest happening in Alabama, which is specifically important because Alabama is notable for having, despite having over 190 people represent them in the federal House of Representatives, the two current Congress people whose districts are at risk because their attempt to push in a new map are both BIPOC, and they are two of seven total people to ever serve as a congressional representative in the state of Alabama while being BIPOC. There was not a single black person who served in Congress representing Alabama between 1878 and 1992. For those in the audience, do you know what happened in 1877? That's right, Reconstruction ended. So for almost, actually over 100 years, almost 120 years, not a single black person represented the state of Alabama. Now we have two of the seven districts in Alabama are represented by a black person, both of them Democrats. But if the Republican legislator gets their way, never again will a black person have power in Alabama as long as they are in charge, because they are afraid of the power of the people united, right? They want to divide us up into these little categories and get us to all fight each other, convincing us that the reason why our lives are bad isn't because of the massive wealth transfer from everyone else to the Forbes 500 to the few billionaire oligarchs in this country, but because of someone who looks slightly different from you. That's their goal, to get us all to fight. When in reality, we should be standing up and peacefully fighting against them. But back to Louisiana specifically. What are, past the recall, what are some other steps that people in Louisiana can take to support the effort to stand up against this racist redistricting? And also, how can people like me and other people that aren't in Louisiana help you guys out?
I think the best way to help out is to get in touch with the coordinators on the website that was dropped in the chat to see what they need mutual aid wise, because they're all volunteers doing this during all of the world being in chaos. And honestly, just sharing online is probably the best thing, because some people haven't even heard about it yet because of the algorithms are really messing us up. Fun fact about the Reconstruction thing, we've only had 4 black people voted in since then.
Only four since Reconstruction ended?
Yes.
Do you know what the number was during between the Civil War and Reconstruction ending?
No, actually, I do not.
That would be, I mean, I don't know Louisiana numbers off the top of my head. I was doing a project on Alabama, which is how I got those numbers in my head, and they won't leave my head because they're so depressing. To, yeah, oh yeah, for 120 years, everyone was Mayo, like representing, just like what the hell. Like I don't have a way to talk about this politely, even though I'm the national press coordinator, because it's so absurd on the face of it. But I don't know the Louisiana numbers off the top of my head. I can't imagine that they're much better in the sense of like in between Reconstruction and now. But before Reconstruction ended, during Reconstruction, from that 1866 to 1877 range, there was way more BIPOC representation in Congress. Now, of course, like that's not everything on the face of it, right? Primarily, you don't want a million of what's his name, Byron Donalds, whatever the guy in Florida is. But at the same time, fundamentally speaking, there's absolutely a correlation between policies that protect the interests of minority voters and minority representation in Congress, right? We're talking about like for example, the Violence Against Women Act, which suffice to say, we did not have much congressional support until we started electing women to Congress. And now we actually have that act. And for all the flaws of our crime safety and prevention, we actually did have, for at least a while, some task forces specifically designed to help fix a fundamental equity in United States society. And I am just making sure that that act did not get overruled by some sort of insane Trump legal thing or Supreme Court ruling. So just making sure I'm not terrible. Yes, I'm right. And actually, in 2024, the Supreme Court ruled 8-1, upholding a provision in the law instead of the opposite. And in 2019, the bill briefly expired but was reauthorized. So, and then was reauthorized again by Biden. When does the bill expire? Um, I'm sorry, guys, I'm getting stun locked. But back to Louisiana. What other, when it comes to the organizing around the election, what were you guys planning to do initially? And what are you guys doing now instead, or what hasn't changed?
So only the primary has been suspended. So we have been trying to get people to understand that not all of the election is suspended because we have amendments locally and parish wide that need to be voted on, and they all need to be voted no.
Okay, so there are some, there's still stuff on the ballot on May 16th that matter. It's
Yes.
just not specifically the congressional elections, or which map is, are all the maps being redone, or just the congressional map?
All of them. And for the recall, by the way, you have to be a registered voter and sign in person. Just want to throw
Uh,
that out there.
got it. That so you have to be in person to vote on the props,
Yep.
the ballot measures, as I
And the
recall.
recall. You have to go to an actual certified volunteer who has done the recall paperwork to be able for it to be counted.
Got it. So that's for, I assume because you don't have enough signatures yet, the recall isn't on the ballot yet, but it's to get it on the ballot.
Yes.
Okay. And what's the deadline for that? Because
October
obviously,
31st.
okay. I mean, yeah, you guys are gonna, yeah,
I'm
you
gonna
guys are
start
gonna,
knocking on doors.
you're gonna, you guys, make sure you keep knocking on doors, but you guys are gonna get that number. You're gonna get that 500,000 number. What actually, if you have time, because it's an interesting thing to discuss, what are the ballot measure? What are the measures on the ballot that are particularly heinous in your mind for the April 16th election? What motivates people to still get out there and vote, even if the right for them to choose their own congressperson is at least for now stripped from them?
One of them, which is raising the limit of judges to be 75. That is the probably most controversial one because half people say vote no, half of them want to vote yes. Um, Another one is civil service changes, and it gives lawmakers more control over which state jobs are protected under civil service. So it makes state workers vulnerable to political influence and blowback, which we do not want. They also want to make a new school district whenever we barely have funds to support all of the school districts we already have because we're not the best at education in the country. I think we've finally gone up to like 46 instead of 50 recently. Um, Another one is education funding and pay, and it's worded very, very well to make you think it's very good, but it's honestly taking money away from other funding to give teachers raises.
I mean, that's so they're so hold on. What are they presenting it as, and how does it actually exist?
They are saying that it's just to give teachers raises. They're not talking at all about where the funds are going to be coming from.
And the funds are coming from.
If I'm not mistaken, They're going to be coming from other school districts, but I am not 100% sure.
Got it. So it is so from my understanding, the issue there is going to generally be speaking um not great when it comes to the ultimate impacts of it because they're being a little bit more than a little bit sneaky on it.
Yes. This
Um
is probably the fourth time we've had this same amendment on a ballot.
Got it. So like this has been sort of like the dialysis thing in California where this happens every year, like every year. Um, like every time that there's an election, there's a new proposition where there's some sort of proxy fight between two groups of people, and they're not being totally honest. At least one of the groups isn't being totally honest about the actual purposes of the bill, of the proposition slash ballot measure. But nonetheless, it is bad, and you shouldn't vote for it, right? I think I lost you for a second there. Um,
Yes, sorry.
no, you're good. You're good.
I was looking at my
Uh,
notes.
Yeah. The other thing is, do you know when it comes to some of the candidates, and like if you guys have been doing any sort of like canvassing work or work meeting the candidates, even if it's not something where it's like coming from the perspective of supporting either the chapter or state level, um, how does this affect any candidates that you thought were interesting for the potentially the new maps if they stand? Does it make any of them less viable? Do they have to run against each other? Is there anyone you want to highlight as
Um,
someone able to check out? Not even necessarily backing, but you just think that they have an interesting platform.
I think the person who has the most interesting back platform is Jamie Davis. He is a black man running who is going on the campaign as like he is a farmer. So he's trying to be your normal citizen trying to run, like a grassroots movement type campaign. And he seems to be the most human of all. He seems very caring. He's already said stuff about how he supports women's rights and how it's none of anyone's business, which is something I really, really like because in the South as a woman, it's not very fun, especially since we just did the whole try to get another ban on the abortion pills for the whole country instead of just Louisiana.
Got it. Um, that totally makes sense. And I think that they should absolutely check out that candidate just because we need. I mean, I really like the coming from the angle of like the everyday American who's had to sort of toughen up and get into a race because their people are not being fairly represented. Obviously, of course, with the redistricting, as you mentioned, it's going to be more difficult. But hey, with a large enough wave of new voters, anything is possible, right?
Yes, and then we even have someone running against Mike Johnson,
Oh, who's running against Mike Johnson? The
Conrad
recent
Cable.
who?
Conrad Cable.
I like that name. What are they running on?
Um, in my opinion, this is just my opinion only. I feel like it's more centrist than
Got it.
Republican, but it's definitely better than what we have now.
Yeah.
And
Fun
we have
fact.
to kind of pick our battles sometimes, especially down here.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I'm coming from California, right? Where like you would think we have all these great progressive leftist options, we often really don't. Right now in the governor's race, we are looking at a bunch of people who uh, have various scandals attached to them, and at this point, if you're trying to vote against the billionaires, there's a strong argument to be made that the best option is to vote against the billionaires is somehow the one billionaire on the ballot, well, the one Democratic billionaire on the ballot. The other billionaire on the ballot is an immigrant from Britain who has run it, who has Trump's endorsement. So not that one, but the other one. Uh, um, so like we have our own mess of things sometimes, but I totally get that sometimes you do have to make those compromises, even if they're not great. Because, and fun fact for the musical theater fans in the audience, the reason why the musical The Prom is set in Indiana is because Mike Johnson is from there. and they wanted to highlight a place where there's a lot of homophobia and discrimination at the state and institutional level. And Mike Johnson being from there was a great. Sorry, hold on, wait. Who's from Indiana? Am I wrong? Have I completely lost the plot? Who is running against? Did I think I got myself majorly confused. That's really funny. Um, you said he was running against Mike Johnson?
Yes.
Mike Johnson, is there two Mike Johnsons, and that's what got me confused?
No, the speaker, Mike Johnson.
He's running against.
Conrad Black. I'm sorry, Conrad Cable. I'm sorry.
Hold on, he is running against the fourth district. Am I sorry? I'm having truly a brain fart day, and I hope so no one was clipping me, but nope, that is actually Mike Johnson. Why is I see. Um, that is very funny. I have confused Mike Johnson and Mike Pence.
Oh
So
no.
I was 2 years off. So yeah, the reason why the prom was set in Indiana was because of Mike Johnson. Sorry, Mike Pence, not Mike Johnson. The reason why the secret musical Prom 2, which I'm now writing to cover my own ass, is set in Louisiana is Mike Johnson. So we all good? Hunter writes Prom 2, and then we forget that this happened.
Yes.
But so yeah, I mean, I would take a centrist stem. I'd probably take John Fetterman over Mike Johnson, right? Even if it's the Fetterman.
I
Um,
think probably almost anyone is better than Mike Johnson.
what about Mike Johnson's evil twin, Tyke Johnson, who's on the back of his head and is the one telling him that the Earth is only 6,000 years old? I feel like that guy might be worse than Mike Johnson. Or Doug Wilson, the Pete Hegseth's pastor mentor, who has written books about how slavery was a better thing for America and was a better thing for people of all races, and we should go back to that. That's Doug Wilson, who is a mentor for Pete Hegseth and leads those churches. And of course, you know, we could always talk about Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth himself or Cash Patel. Actually, I'd probably take Cash Patel over Mike Johnson. But there's some pretty bad people out there. But Mike Johnson's definitely in the top, at least the top 20 for Republicans, right?
I guess. I mean, and there's also Bill Cassidy, which I don't really like either, but we do have the funny one, which is John Kennedy. He at least is kind of funny.
The guy who does the accent.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's
Because isn't he
he's
like,
the one who says you're the reason why there's instructions on shampoo bottles.
yeah. Do
Have
you
you
think
ever
it's
seen
still,
those compilations?
yes.
They're
Oh,
hilarious.
those
Yes.
are fantastic. Yeah. I, a running joke I've seen is that people don't think John Kennedy would still be in office if his last name wasn't Kennedy. And I'm curious
Correct.
if there's any races he would have lost if it weren't for his last name.
Absolutely. I agree.
I'm just like people seem to think that he's like a Kennedy, right? Like they think it's like, oh, John Kennedy, vote for him. And like, no, he's not even
Mhm.
related. We just got Jack Schlossberg, who can't even say Free Palestine, running in New York District 12 or 13. It's either 12 or 13. But either way, he is still probably more progressive on the issue than most of the other people he's running against our major candidates.
Honestly, probably. And I feel like he's one of the only reps that actually talk to his constituents. Like anytime I email him, he will automatically respond within like a day, and no other reps will message
Oh,
me back or anything.
Kennedy responds?
Yes.
That's interesting. I'm shocked by that.
And like Cleo Fields has a auto pin response all the time, but Kennedy actually like responds to the things. He even was like agreeing with me on the Epstein files thing. So I feel like he's more centrist as well instead of straight up old Republican now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look at like some of the stuff. He has some very specific bills and stuff that were pretty terrible.
Yes,
But then again,
absolutely.
but also he was one of the three Republican senators who helped protect net neutrality from the FCC and from Republicans. Common misconception on the internet: net neutrality is a good thing. The thing that we have now is that doesn't allow for web throttling is net neutrality. Getting rid of net neutrality would mean net bias, and net bias would allow them to ruin your day. So it was a good thing that we stopped the FCC and that was good of him. And the two common we're Republicans, but we're not as evil as the other Republicans, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. Murkowski, who I believe because Alaska's weird, and Susan Collins, who I don't believe because she's in Maine, and it looks like Graham Plattner is going to be running against her. So that will be an interesting race to watch come November. Uh, but nonetheless, you're probably right. John Kennedy, despite the accent and the stupidity, might actually be one of the least evil Republicans, which is impressive because he is still pretty terrible.
He's definitely pretty terrible, but at least it's a little bit entertaining. That's the least we can ask for, being down in Louisiana, I feel.
Is that an endorsement for George Santos for president, Lilith? If you're still
No,
by
I am not endorsing anyone.
remember George Santos? Remember the guy you got kicked out for fraud? He's the one who would
Yes.
lie about everything.
Ew.
We
Ew.
should, we should invite George Santos on the 5051 podcast. I feel like that'd be funny. I feel like that'd be an all-time play. Get a former congressional rep, and it's like the ridiculous one. See if we can get him to say like abolish ICE or something. Convince him that ICE is the one managing his fraud case. See if we can get him. If we can get him to say to abolish them. I don't know. Anyways, we'll stop stun locking long enough to sort of recap the what if you had a 1 minute pitch to the people of Louisiana and also the rest of the wider world and had their attention for 1 minute. What is your pitch to them about why they should get involved in standing up against Louisiana's governor and against this mid-decade redistricting? And what can they do to get involved? Like, what's the elevator pitch at the end of it all?
So I feel like the elevator pitch would be that the governor here thinks that he thinks he knows better than the voters, which is not true because the people are the ones who are in power. And whenever a governor tells a national audience that he can just hit the pause on democracy because of a court told him his map was racist, he is admitting that his power is more important than your right to vote. And if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will.
I mean, that's a pretty good pitch to me. Like, right? Like, I would personally like to still be have a say in who I'm electing, right? And have a say in who's representing me. And it's scary that they're trying to take that away. So, thank you so much for joining us, Lilith. We're going to get back to the regularly scheduled election coverage. But if you want to hang around, if you have some hot takes on Nebraska, you are totally welcome to stick around.
Probably stick around, probably not have many hot takes, but I will be commenting.
I appreciate that. Anything so that my mouth will be a little bit less dry. Higher, we want to cover the Nebraska race ballot drops already? And
Yes. For the Senate primary results, we already have a winner. In the Democrat primary between Cindy Burbank and William Forbes with 52.2% expected votes in. I will tell you it's not close. It's absolutely not close. Cindy Burbank has already won with 50,663 votes. That's 90.3% of the vote. Yes, 90.3%. I'm not. That's a lot. Compared to Williams Forbes's 5,473 votes, that's 9.7% of the vote. It's not close at all. But we have on our spreadsheets, which we keep track for the Renew Deal stuff. I believe we have Burbank at a 4.5. She wants to remove the regime. She wants to end Citizens United. She wants to make billionaires pay. She wants to build better tomorrow. And she's a half point America for all. But her opponent, William Forbes, is a zero, like complete zero. So for Nebraska Senate, I think we're pretty good there. As for the House, good.
Wait, there's a lot more to this race that we are leaving out. If we just say Cindy Burbank's winning by a lot and that's it, that does not have the whole picture. Okay, there's a lot of nuance here that has not been, because Republicans and Democrats have both accused candidates in this race of being astroturfed, and it's fascinating because So initially, the Democratic Party was saying, we're not going to run anybody. Instead, we're going to support my boy Dan Osborne, who is an independent running for Senate. He did pretty well in 2024. He significantly outran Kamala Harris, although he did not win. He's running again in 2026 in a blue wave year in Nebraska. Unfortunately, being a Dem is seen as like kind of a negative thing, and it does hurt them more than it helps them. Even though you don't get some of the Democratic Party support generally by running as an independent, not having the D next to your name is usually a better thing in Nebraska, especially in a large Senate race. But again, there's exceptions because Nebraska's got its own little unique electoral system where it's not a winner takes all for the presidential elections. Actually, got a district split. But what we're looking at here is William Forbes jumping in because there wasn't a Democrat in the race, and we need to get back to the old fashioned Democratic values like John F. Kennedy. And Democrats were like, I smell a rat. This pastor is a Republican plant. And so then Cindy Burbank jumps in, and Cindy Burbank says, I'm running because I think we need a real Democrat representing us. And also, if it gets too close to November and I'm not polling super well, I'll drop out and endorse someone who's got a more viable chance than I do. And then Republicans were like, that's cheating. You can't run because you're running to drop out. Your goal is to win the primary and drop out, so William Forbes isn't on the ballot. And of course, Democrats are like, no, no, no. If Cindy Burbank can win, we'll vote for Cindy Burbank. But if Cindy Burbank can't win, we'll vote for Dan Osborne, and that's what she's going to do. So technically, it's fine. And then the Republicans, of course, they did not file their objection in time, so they didn't really have a shot. So personally speaking, as a Dan Osborne man myself, I am rooting on Cindy Burbank and was maybe a little bit generous in the point total because I'm not rooting for her to win. I'm rooting for her to beat William Forbes because I think the Nebraska Democratic Party, who has been running William Forbes is a Republican plain, don't vote for him, ads all day on Twitter and on Blue Sky and other places. Has been really. I kept on Googling William Forbes, and half of the results were just Nebraska Dems complaining about him, like the Democratic Party, and be like, he's not real, he's a Republican. Like this guy, he doesn't even have a website that I could find. William Forbes, like it just the whole thing was like red flag, red flag, red flag. So good for Cindy Burbank, who definitely is a real candidate who's not going to drop out after like a month and help support my guy Dan Osborne. That's not happening. I am not in Nebraska. I've never spoken to any member of the Nebraska Democratic Party. Nothing I am saying. All this is a meme. All this is a joke. All this is in Minecraft and Roblox. I am not personally suggesting anything for the Nebraska Democratic Party strategy. But you know what would be really cool? I'm just saying. Here, did Haramius, did you know anything about this race before this?
No, but I do have a news article pulled up covering this drama. It's interesting. I keep saying it's interesting, but it is. If I want to read you an excerpt from this quote, for all the accusations Republicans are facing, Mr. Ricketts outlets contend that Democrats and Mr. Osborne are the ones using slave hand tactics. Many of their claims center on the primary race for the little-known Legal Marijuana Now Party. Mrs. Burbank paid the $1,740 filing fee for Mike Marvin, a candidate who GOP critics have predicted will drop out and back Mr. Osborne if he won the marijuana nomination. Mr. Marvin is not the allegations. One thing to note, the Legal Marijuana Now Party's nominee for Senate in 2024 did this. He pulled that exact move. He pulled out. And I'm not in Nebraska either. Like, we're both not from Nebraska. We're like far away from Nebraska as we possibly can. But imagine that happening in California. Imagine that happening in the governor primary. That Jesus. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's just a matter of like this whole thing's nonsensical. Like there's nothing happening here. Like it's just the whole thing's like ridiculous. It's very funny. Um it's just like it kind of makes me laugh, you know? Like it's so silly what happened here. Um and at the end of the day, like I'm actively rooting for this like I'm rooting for Cindy Burbank, functionally speaking, with the hopes that she's not on the ballot in November. Because the best chance Dan Osborne has is there's no D on the ballot and the Nebraska Democratic Party is publicly polling for him, but he can say, I'm not a Democrat, I'm a Nebraskan, and I'm running to make your life better against the MAGA governor that's trying to destroy us, right? So like he can hit those points, right, where he can have both the independent point but also the Democratic support, and it be completely sincere. Um, he actually has a. I'm gonna put this up on here. A in my own renewed deal rank of 5, because he doesn't have much about ICE or Medicare for all going on, but he's got Remove the Regime and Citizens United and Endless Wars, Make Billionaires Pay, and Building a Better Tomorrow. He's got actually a great. It's called like a Nebraska for All fairness plan. Let me see if I can find it. Um, Osborne. He's got a pretty great Nebraska fairness plan with a lot of different points, including my personal favorite. You don't see a lot of this on nearly enough campaign about pages. If you're running for office and you don't have a release the Epstein files on your issues page, you should add it. It will take you 5 minutes. Just put release the files. It's not that hard, and we'll get you votes. Um, Either way, though, that's sort of what's going on in the Nebraska race. Do you want to talk about some of the primary House results? Maybe the
Yeah,
governor
before
as
I
well.
do, we might want to be careful with showing the news sites. We don't want to get flat.
Yeah, I checked on
The
this one, and this one is generally speaking allowed, but I am actually going to stop sharing it once you cover the results so that we can
Yep.
just yap about it.
For District 1 for the Nebraska Democratic House primary, we have one second, I have to actually load it. We have Chris Backenmeyer. I almost said Backermeyer, but Chris Backenmeyer with 14,374 votes and 62.8% of the vote, compared to Eric Moyer's 8,514 votes, 37.2% of the vote, with 56% expected votes in. I believe we have either Moyer or Moyer at a 6 for the renewed deal rank, and we have Backenmeyer at 4.5. We have I believe it was Moyer who wants America for all, who wants to remove the regime, who wants to end Citizens United, who wants to make Baron Perry. In fact, the only thing the only two things that he's half on is abolish ICE to build better tomorrow, which I mean, compared to 4.5, that's pretty good, I would say. Uh, we also have results coming in for District 2, the Nebraska House District 2 primary for Democrats. We have John Kavanaugh, CAVANAUGH, not the Supreme Court Justice. He currently has 39.7% of the vote, 11,752 votes. Denise Powell is actually pretty close with 36% of the vote, 10,662 votes. And Crystal Rhodes, RHOADES, with 4,858 votes. That's 16.4% of the vote, with 61.8% of the expected votes in. Do we have any one of these folks? Yeah, John Kavanaugh. Here we go. He has a ranking of 5. We actually have him at a 0.25 for Abolish ICE America for All. Hunter, would it be possible for you to explain those two metrics?
Yeah. So sort of coming over here to the I guess the what I'm calling the New Deal Dem, but to be honest, it's New Deal candidates. Again, Dan Osborne, not a Democrat, but still cool. Actually, probably cooler because he isn't one. I'm a registered independent. Go join the Working Families Party today. That's not a 50-51 endorsement. That's me talking. Either way, the New Deal Dem slash New Deal candidate platform is sort of a collation of different progressive and anti-oligarch and anti-fascist platform policies that we've seen candidates adopt, and it's sort of a way to tell apart progressive leftist Democrats who are running to make a real change in this country versus moderate establishment candidates who are saying all the right things but don't actually have a policy plan to back it. So I try to give them more points when there's more of a policy plan behind it rather than just what they're saying. Although ending Citizens United is, will I vote on a bill to overturn the Citizens United ruling? Yes or no? And like that's pretty straightforward. But the other ones, like there's usually a bit more nuance here. And those policies are abolishing ICE, Medicare for all, remove the regime, end Citizens United, end endless wars, which is about like the genocide in Gaza, but also Ukraine. make billionaires pay in building a better tomorrow, with building a better tomorrow being a catch-all for housing and also for local issues that affect the local communities. Like in West Virginia, we're looking at stuff for in Nebraska, we're looking at a lot of farm bill stuff, and in West Virginia, we're looking at a lot of like combating opioid addiction and helping with West Virginian infrastructure um, and environmental protections. So here, the 0.25 for abolishing ICE for John Kavanaugh is specific to him calling for ending qualified immunity for ICE. He is calling for reforms and meaningful changes, but those meaningful changes aren't anything outside of what the bog standard Democratic calls are, except for the qualified immunity point, which is a pretty big step and enough for me to give him less than half a point because that sets a precedent for what is and isn't on the table to remove later. If you can get, John Kavanaugh from Nebraska District 2 to be supporting that level of abolishing like supporting that, what do you think we can get out of a Californian Dem or a New York Dem? We can get a lot further. And if we can end qualified immunity for ICE, can we end it for corrupt cops too? Similarly for Medicare for All, I'm actually going to pull up his campaign page right there so I can actually show what I'm talking about. But there's a very specific thing he is calling for when it comes to. Nope, that is well. If you wanted to volunteer for him, you're a little bit too late. He specifically is here. He is talking about not just a tax credit to cover the difference in fixing the ACA, which isn't enough for a point, and reversing those cuts isn't enough for a point. He is specifically talking about taking action against big pharma, not just limiting their ability to sponsor specific. Where is it? Removing their ability to sponsor specific Congresspeople and donate to them. At the same time, he's also running on holding them accountable for the price gouging while lowering the cost per prescription drugs, which is going to turn into some level of anti-monopoly action. So he got the barest to bear points for it, especially when you compare him to his opponent, who is getting a lot of money from associated places, allegedly. We actually have even more of a situation there with the End Endless Wars. He's stood up against endless wars, stood up against the war in Iran, and has made some statements that have indicated to me some general support for humanitarian solutions in Gaza. But his opponent, to put it lightly, is sort of the opposite of that. It's very much being embraced by some of the worst options there. I do want to highlight a candidate who, although is not really in the race at this point, has put up a pretty good showing. Melanie Williams, she's running in District 2, and was someone that we talked to our Nebraska team about. This race turned into a Kavanaugh versus Denise Powell fight, very Godzilla, right? Like Godzilla versus King Kong or versus Mothra. But Melanie Williams was running as a unabashed Democratic Socialist and is helping pave the way eventually for what could be a progressive populist run either by her or someone else in a future race here in Nebraska District 2. And what matters there is that you have to start somewhere to see those results. So if she's doing this and there hasn't been much of a progressive infrastructure built, her race, even getting more than 1%, can help in a primary election, which is harder to do than you think, can help build towards a larger movement in the future. So it's important to highlight what she's doing because that's a name you might see again in the future. Is she going to beat John Kavanaugh or Denise Powell? No, she's not. Not this race. But a couple years down the line, with the right backing, get some of those Morris Katz team fight people that helped out with Mondani's campaign on there, get a good DSA chapter, get a Working Families Party chapter up and running in Nebraska, get some union support, you're in business. And Kavanaugh, at least compared to Powell's, no slouch when it comes to some of the more progressive Dems. I want to say I think Ro Khanna and Greg Cesar have backed him, different members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which implies that if he wins, he's going to join the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which would be fascinating for a Nebraska Dem. That's very rare. You don't see that very often. A state like Nebraska, where they won't even run a Dem in the Senate, having a CPC, a potential CPC member running for Congress and currently, I believe, ahead in the polls. Last I checked. We got any other districts that we want to cover, or we want to go to the governor race for Nebraska?
Uh, well, for District 3, it's let me lower it first because I want to say B Style. I want to say her name properly. Becky Style is not running. Is running against no one else, so she automatically gets the District 3 House Democratic votes. So Becky Style, we have her website up, and if we could probably go to the immigration part really quickly. Want to read
Yeah, let's
that?
pull that
It's
up right here.
right there. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this personally. I don't love this. I don't love this framing. Um,
It's only
what
secure borders.
what efficiency? What integrity and efficiency do we have in our current immigration system, Becky? Not,
Yes, well,
look,
go ahead.
I want to be clear to anyone watching this who's freaking out about you guys being like, "Whoa, why are you guys insulting Becky? Why are you guys insulting Becky? Why are you guys talking about Becky? She's the Democratic nominee. She just won the primary. If people are making their general election voting decisions based on whether or not Hunter Dunn trashes them on a live stream, you got bigger problems, okay? You have bigger problems than Hieramius and I making some jokes about a bad policy. So let's get back to making jokes about the bad policy.
It says here, quote, yet while we reinforce these boundaries, we must remember that our nation's been and always will be a beacon of hope for all.
What does
Given
that mean?
how
What do you mean by
given
that?
how
You can't just say that. Michael Scott here. I'm declaring that I believe in a beacon of hope for all. What are you going to do to fix the immigration system? What are you going to do to like make a better pathway to citizenship and to stop ICE? I believe in a beacon of hope for all. You can't just declare a beacon of hope. Lilith, what do you think? Well, no, let's pull up one of her other policies, see what she says about healthcare. Okay, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. That's solid.
I'm the type of person who thinks that borders are stupid, so do you really want my opinion?
Yeah. Do you think it's not just a matter of national defense? It's essential for upholding the rule of law, safeguarding our economic interests, and ensuring the well-being of our citizens. Do you agree or disagree?
That's a lot, but I think we should just not have borders because we live on the same planet, so we should all just treat each other like humans.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's very much of a what are we doing here, right? Like that's sort of the basic issue there. Nonetheless, she's running on a pro-labor platform. She's running on a pro-reproductive freedoms platform. She's running on a animal rights platform, which is interesting. I actually wasn't expecting to read robust animal protection programs. It means she's running on something. I I am unconvinced by this paragraph, but I'm going to move on because I'm from LA. And my opinions on there are probably not safe for public consumption. Let's look at the governor's race before we turn off the screen share.
Yep.
Looks like Jim Pillen has been assured that he will be running as a Republican in the general election. He's the current incumbent. Now, this wasn't shocking to anyone, considering that Larry Marvin seems to be a perennial candidate, from my understanding. He's 87. He's a veteran from Fremont. But Lynn Walls has clinched with 92% of the vote the Nebraska governor primary. Hieramius, Lilith, what do you guys know about Lynn Walls?
No, not much. I'm afraid. I'm sorry, but
Sorry. Nope.
we're not from Nebraska. I'm afraid.
When it comes to the when it comes to Lynn Walls, do any of you guys recognize the okay, sorry. Lynn Walls. There, for those of you who are familiar with the last name Walls, it sounds a lot like the governor of Minnesota's last name. And you would be right, because she is I think a cousin of Tim Walls. And I'm going to fact check myself right now just to make sure I'm not crazy and didn't do another thing. Lynn Walls, Tim Walls. Yeah, distant relative of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. They're related. They are actually related. Now, what's hard here is on my New Deal Dem list, I did not exactly put Lynn Walls or Larry Marvin in the list. I kind of put no preference because Larry Marvin doesn't have a platform, and Lynn Walls has been a bit flip floppy. She was in a very, she was in a generally pretty red district and was seen as a swing vote on things like gender care and abortion. She voted against on the same side, she was allowed for local needle exchange programs. She voted against having concealed carry without a permit. She voted against broad income tax cuts. She was working on different bipartisan plans. She's definitely seen as like a more moderate centrist Nebraskan governor example. But at the same time, she also has. There's been some real debate about whether or not you would consider her to be progressive or conservative, because she is, although more moderate, because she represented a Republican-leaning county. At the same time, despite introducing some restrictions on gender affirming care for minors in a compromise plan, which didn't end up passing. She was actually instrumental in preventing large restrictions on gender affirming care for minors. For example, like, puberty blockers and potentially hormone replacement therapy with proper guidelines and medical things being followed. I believe you also need parental consent for these in basically every state in the United States. So again, there's a pretty high bar to make that happen. But she was, despite it all, very important in actually protecting those protections and loosening restrictions on abortions, despite supporting some like second trimester restrictions. At the same time, she was a big proponent of law enforcement in 2020 and running on a lower taxes, stronger schools, and booming economy platform. So she's moderate. She's centrist. She's fine. Lilith, what were you saying again about the Conrad Cable guy and about how to handle moderates?
They're the lesser of two evils, so pick the best one.
I mean, guy who vetoes needle exchange programs, I think, is more evil than moderate Democrat. So,
Yes, absolutely.
hey, Tim Walz, she's related to Tim Walz, right? Great, we love Tim. Actually, I don't, but like, it's like surely she's fine. Tim Walz. It's like pay no attention to the votes behind the curtain. It seems like a bit of a Becky style pick, but also, I will say she has been a strong proponent of their medical marijuana program, which is still in the process of being regulated and rolled out after being approved in 2024. So, on one side of things, you have some pretty moderate conservative policies. On the other side of things, you actually have her holding the line on some very important social issues and advancing certain economic issues. So it could be worse. Do we got any updates in the West Virginia races right now?
In the Senate primary, it's still close and they're still bringing in votes. With 80.9% of the expected votes in, Rachel Anderson is leading with 28,995 votes with 33.8% of vote. Jeffrey Kessler has 23,355 votes with 27.2% of the vote, and Zachary Shrewsbury has 13,762 votes, 16% of the vote. Again, this is with almost 81% of votes in, and none of the folks here can even reach 35%, let alone 40%, let alone 50%. So this might be a race we might be looking at for a little bit. And it's almost 10 p.m. as well. 10 p.m. my time.
Yeah. So as you're saying, you think West Virginia, some of these races are going to be one of the last updates we get for them?
I would say so. It's too early to call. They're less than 35%. Each of them is like less than 35%, with 80.9% of the votes in. The estimated remaining amount of votes is 21,000 as well, which yeah, I feel like they might not call it until probably a few hours later, probably into the morning. We still got more votes coming in, and Zachary Shrewsbury just got a 0.1% bump in the percentage, and Richard Anderson now has 29,075 votes, Chevy Kester still has 23,393 votes, and Zachary Shrewsbury has 13,795 votes. I believe we got our API ready.
Yeah. Actually, this is going to bring up Karsh, our tech wizard, is going to be bringing up the API pretty shortly. I see him smiling in our Zoom call, so I know he's here, but you can't see him yet, audience, until he says something.
Hey y'all, how's it going tonight? Did we feel like we got some results out of everything, or are we positive about tonight? You know, I would love to see what the trends look like tonight with how it compares with the 2024 election, and see the margins of what Trump had over Biden, or sorry, over Kamala. And we'll be able to assess if there's a swing towards one direction or another using our map tonight. So I'm excited to also talk about some of the endorsements we have for the Pennsylvania election coming up, I believe next week. So I hail from Paul Rev, and we have a couple of candidates that are of the progressive slate, and we're looking forward to seeing how we can put forward some of those policies and issue stances in competitive races. So I'll be talking to that a little later, but let's dive in. Let's see what you guys have been tracking along, and I'll share my screen around our map.
I can tell you for the House primary in West Virginia for District 2, actually. I want to say District 2 because, one, they have 89.2% of votes in, and it's close. Ace Parsi has 39.9% of the vote, 17,449 votes, but Stephanie Tomana has 16,580 votes and 37.9% of votes. So they are separated by like 2%, I think. Compared that to Stephen Wendelin with 23% of vote, 9,752 votes. If they did like ranked choice voting, I feel like that might really, if Wendelin's votes are transferred to the Parsi of Tamana, I feel like there might still be a little bit of hesitancy in declaring who wins. So I'll leave it at that.
Now, tell
Yeah.
me exactly which West Virginia District 2 for House, is that correct?
Yes, West Virginia House District 2 Democratic primary. And
Gotcha.
yeah, I think on the API it has Parsi at 41.6% and Tamana at 39.1%.
And how accurate is that in comparison to the current percentage? I'm curious.
Well, I'm looking at the reporting, and on the API it says 23%, and on my monitor, the vote there is at 89.2% expected votes in. So
yeah, so we're quite behind there, it seems. But let's see if we can
yeah.
actually see some trends out of this.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what happened here in 2024 when I look at any given district. These are the margins that show how much it swung in one favor. The darker the red is, the more Republican in this case, right? And if you look at the results of the current candidates, you can see that, the comparison to the elections in 2024, for example, Stephanie Spears being the Democratic candidate is polling 100% in Tucker County with 36.1% versus Trump's 73.4% in the same district. So while this is the Democratic primary alone, we're seeing with only 499 votes, the Democrats have a pretty even matchup across the board, at least when we look at this county.
I mean, it's very much behind, but it's still at the same time, it's going to reflect. Wait, hold on. Is the total votes actually? That doesn't look that far behind to me. Am I crazy?
The total votes,
How many
you're
votes does
right,
Parsi's got?
35,334 for the state.
Oh wow, that's only like a ballot drop or two behind. We're actually doing pretty good because Parsi's got 17,449, so that's off by what, 3K? So maybe like
Uh,
behind.
I got. Oh, hold on 1 second. Yeah, I think so. But it
Oh, wow, and it just
says
updated a little bit more. Yeah, that's like 3K. That's not bad. Cars,
yeah.
the tech's getting better.
Yeah, it'll catch up even better as Civic API, our free open source provider, starts to work in more with the Secretary of States and their direct local elections. So I'm looking forward to getting this more current and refreshed for our streams here.
I will say, I think actually, since more recently, Tamana is actually closer, just 2%, compared to about 2.5% on your map. So she's been gaining in almost every battle drop that we've seen, which may mean that in the end, she actually pulls out a win over Parsi, which would mean that, although not the New Deal Dem choice, I would argue that's probably pretty clearly Commander Steve Wendland. Tamana is probably the better option with a 3 in the New Deal Dem score, at least from a progressive standpoint, as she is running on some pretty progressive changes when it comes to, I believe, at least the economy and education. And I'm going to double check some of her other policies because I did not have it all the way written down. Come on.
So where exactly are we seeing Ace lead by the most votes, right? I'm taking a look into some
Uh,
of these pink ones.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
it's I got it as well. We have Parsi leading in the counties of Hancock, Brooke, Ohio, and Marshall. There's a few more. Those are the like. If you can zoom out for a moment. Sorry. Yeah, those four like purplish ones on the very top. Those are the four. Those are Hancock, Brooke,
Right.
Ohio, and Marshall counties. He's also leading in Monongalia County, Preston
That's the big
County.
one. Monongalia has almost 5,000 votes for Ace, while Stephanie only has 1,500. So that seems to be a very populous county.
We also have Parsi leading in Berkeley and Jefferson counties. Those are a lot more closer to DC than, say, Preston County, etc. Those are the counties that Parsi is leading in that I know of. Wendland actually is. Go ahead.
Tamana, sorry, Parsi's probably the most conservative over the three of them.
How is he ranked in terms of our renewed deal score?
Yeah, so Wenlin has a 5.5. Tamana actually has a 4. He has, I want to say, um, he has that's a 1 right there, and then that's a 2. He has, from my understanding, just a 2.5 because he's got some steps towards holding Congress accountable, holding elected officials accountable, ending advocacy for ending Citizens United protections, being a bit generous by calling that a full point there because it's a bit of a vague sentence. And he's got some good stuff about treating addiction, caring for care workers, and protecting sort of like the wild land and also infrastructure in Nebraska. So when it comes to those angles, that's a 3. So he is actually third with 3 compared to her 4 in Wenland's 5.5. So at this point, I personally would probably be pulling for Tamana over Wenland, but sorry, over Parsi, just because Wenland is so far behind. Nonetheless, though, it's certainly an interesting race.
Just a brief, just gonna answer someone's question in the Twitch chat. Do either of these states do runoffs? According to the runoff count, sorry, not the runoff counter, the primary counter I got here, they both do not have any separate dates for a runoff. So I don't see any runoff date for Nebraska or West Virginia. So that might be the answer might be a no there. Also, we are expecting next set results from Nebraska 945. Thank you very much, Sarcastic Ghost, for letting us know. I don't know if that was 9:45 Central Standard Time or if they means another time, but according to the chat, next set results from Nebraska are 9:45.
Yeah. Also, from my understanding, neither Nebraska nor West Virginia have any runoff elections whatsoever. There's only 10 states that have runoff elections as part of their party nomination process. But Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Texas, which are actually all, with the exception of Georgia, red states, which is North Carolina, which is, I guess, purple. But it's actually quite interesting that's a more red state favored system, even though it's actually been really helpful in, for example, helping Raphael Warnock and Jan Ossoff in the general election runoffs. Georgia, Mississippi, and Louisiana are the only states with general election runoffs, which is interesting. Maybe we can oust the Louisiana governor in a runoff. That would be kind of cool.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see where the petition goes first.
I
But
think
if
the
but
petition
if
will
the
pass. It's just a question. In California, we had a recall petition pass, which was fantastic. The problem was, nonetheless, there was not much of a actual broad base of support for the recall campaign itself, mainly because Larry Elder sucked, and Gavin Newsom, despite his flaws, was much better than someone who was calling for the stoning of gay people. So the race was pretty. I think Newsom like cleared 62% or something. It was very easy for him. Um, Either way, when it comes to some of the other races, I'm just looking to see if we have any updates in West Virginia. No.
there is an update for District 1 because earlier while Liv was talking, it was like George and Aguirre were like neck and neck. But right now, George has 21,853 votes with 52.6% of the vote, compared to Brito Aguirre's 19,697 votes, 47.4% of the vote, with 77.4% of the expected votes in.
Yeah. Can we go to Nebraska District 1, Karsh?
Yeah, just a sec here.
That's the House district, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then after that, I want to have a discuss. I want to have a roundtable with your thoughts on a certain issue people debate when it comes to candidates and like who to vote for in a general sense. Not anyone specific in this race, but I want to use a Nebraska race as an example because it's a really good example, I think.
Democrat, Libertarian, or Republican?
Probably Democrat.
Oh, for Nebraska, yeah,
Wait.
let's look at the Democrat race for sure.
Here you are.
For District 1.
This is about 22,888 votes, and it says 0% reporting. So it might be very off there because that's a lot of votes for Nebraska, I'm sure. How
Actually,
does this track?
This matches the NBC exactly.
Yeah.
0% reporting?
55.6.
No.
The vote
That's the
counts
one
were
off.
correct.
Yeah, I thought that would be off. So, but that's great to see the accuracy there. Okay, so let's drill down. What would you like to see?
All right. So they've already called this one for Backenmeyer, which is a bit unfortunate because Drop Site and some other progressive leftist, some would even criticize them a bit, even from a leftist front. But regardless, some leftist sources were talking about a large influx of dark money from questionable sources supporting Backenmeyer in the primary. No, and Moyer, who was running a more, according to my, a more progressive campaign from at least for a New Deal perspective, with a 6 out of 7, 6-7, compared to
Mm.
Backenmeyer's 4.5, Backenmeyer's 4.5, which actually was not bad. That's pretty good for like the more establishment candidate option in the race. Nonetheless, there was some strong. I think I miss. That is very funny. Backenmeyer. Hold on. Yeah. Do you want to drill down and show like what some of the best performing districts were for Backenmeyer versus Moyer?
Yeah, so I know that Nebraska is interesting because it has at large districts and Omaha is not necessarily included, but I'm looking at some districts like Colfax and near Omaha like Sarpy. Let's see what those look like. So Colfax is actually in favor of Eric Moyer. It's only 31 total votes, so that's not very helpful to see, but that's a deadlock. Um, and that's the only one that is actually in favor for Moyer. Everything else looks to be going towards Backmeyer. Let's look
Just an
towards Omaha. Go ahead.
I'll just note that only on NBC they only have Colfax's like total votes in at 13.5% in. So I have a feeling it'll increase a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. And my reporting probably hasn't updated because these results are very much fresh, right? So we have Backmeyer with 55% roughly in Sarpy with almost 3,000 votes. This is a larger district for sure, near Omaha. 5,300 total votes in this district, but they are pretty neck and neck there. But as we go further out, let's see, it looks like Beckmeyer is starting to pick up in percentages here. You're definitely getting more of the rural vote, but actually Lancaster is even bigger. It has over 15,000 or near 14,500 votes, with Backmeyer with the commanding lead, 66% with almost 10,000 votes. So Lincoln is actually the city here. That makes sense. That's another large city in Nebraska. Interestingly
Yeah.
enough, as we drill into the other rural counts, it's very limited amounts of votes, but you can see down below what's going on with the Republican votes here and how many votes there were total in comparison and the percentages that have changed with the Democrats scoring in Lincoln very highly, things like that. Um, that's interesting to me. We'll see how that turns out as we get closer to the generals with more turnout.
Yeah. So, sorry, the specific controversy of Beckemeyer was that despite him raising significantly more money than Eric Moyer, 350K to 50K, uh, Beckemeyer had supported the policies that had led to sort of some of the humanitarian crises in Gaza, Yemen, and Iran. He was a State Department official for 20 years. He served as an advisor to Kamala Harris, actually, when she was vice president, for example. Um, and it showed there was a press guidance from Trump's presidency that showed that Beckemeyer approved the rollout of the Trump's missile and terrorism sanctions against Iran um, after participating in the transition into the new administration. I believe this is referring to the first term, not the second term, um, but it's not super helpful there, information wise. Nonetheless, what's interesting there is that this district, despite voting for Trump 55 to 43, in the Senate election, there were two Senate elections, the regular and the special. In the special, they supported Ricketts 59 to 41, but in the regular election, uh, they actually supported Dan Osborne 51% to Deb Fisher's 49. So this is an example of why it's beneficial for Dan Osborne to run as an independent, because in the special election, Ricketts was facing off against someone running as a Democrat, I believe Lovett, and destroyed him. But Osborne in this district won, despite it being a year where Trump outran Kamala Harris by 12%. Osborne was able to outperform Harris by 14% in this district. So this is a district that's Trump plus 11, but with the Democratic special elections swinging to about Dem 15, in a really good year for Dems, they could pick up this seat if they have a candidate who is able to fundraise and inspire support. And although Moyer seems like he's maybe the more progressive populist choice, and is the choice that I personally preferred going into this race, Beckemeyer is no slouch despite some of his bad foreign policy positions and has a real shot to flip this district. Now, District 2, I believe, is the actual district that is being looked at as a real flip opportunity. And if we want to check on that real quick.
Yeah, sure. Nebraska too for Democrats.
Nebraska 2, yes. Because
Yep.
yeah, Harris won 51-47, and in 2024, Don Bacon, who has actually been one of the most moderate Republicans, won 50.9 to 49.0. So whoever wins in District 2 is probably your next congressperson from Nebraska, from the District 2 Democratic district, the Democratic race, because I believe Don Bacon, the Republican, chose to not seek reelection, um, and instead the guy running for the Republicans is Harding, and Harding is not particularly inspiring of a candidate.
So here's Nebraska 2. Let me know. I have 37,370 total votes, with John Kavanaugh leading at 39%. Most of his votes
Okay.
coming in from Omaha.
Does he have like 14,572?
Exactly.
He's Karsh, you are a technology genius.
So Omaha is showing the biggest disparity here, because that's where John Kavanaugh is leading. Um, with that many votes in, it looks like Denise might actually be able to get more votes out of this district. It depends on how many we expect to see in this race. Right now, we're at 35,000 votes just in the Omaha area. You can see a larger turnout in 273,000 votes in 2024 for presidential, of course. But for a Democratic primary showing this much turnout, I would suggest, or I would think that, this is still close enough in Omaha. Um, you see Denise Powell otherwise leading with a minimal amount of votes in other districts for this at large.
Yeah. We've seen millions of dollars be poured into this race, supporting Powell or opposing Kavanaugh. Some of this from Democratic PACs, but also millions of dollars from Republican PACs trying to
Wow.
focus on the negative consequences if Kavanaugh wins, which implies that they think that Kavanaugh is the much larger threat. We saw this happen with ads being put in. You could actually tell because for a while there was a lot of Republican PACs that were running ads either for or against, sorry, against either Crockett or Tallarico, with the goal of trying to help the other one win the primary because they viewed the other candidate as more dangerous in the primary election. So like they'd make an anti-Jasmine Crockett ad if they were worried about Crockett winning. They'd make an anti-Tallarico ad if they thought Tallarico was more dangerous if he won. They ended up running
Hmm.
more against Tallarico in the end, which implies that they were worried about Tallarico winning, which might be a good thing if you're rooting for Democrats to take over Texas Senate, if Republicans are scared of him. But either way, we actually saw attack ads against the both of them from these sort of dark money groups, where most of the dark money spending by Republicans in the Democratic primary is running, claiming Kavanaugh isn't a good Dem. So they're doing the APAC strategy of trying to convince voters, not based on convincing them that your policy choices are correct, but by attacking them on issues you think would persuade voters that would vote for them in a normal year. So if that holds and Kavanaugh wins, you're probably looking at congressional progressive caucus member from Nebraska District 2. I'm
Right
actually
on.
curious Nebraska 3 numbers though. I can't imagine they're great. Also, still, shout out Melanie Williams. I think you're pretty cool, and I love that you're running a Democratic Socialist campaign in this thing because eventually maybe you can make some real footholds. We can get better than just a CPC member. Nothing against Kavanaugh, though. Thank you, dude, for putting yourself in there. Oh, geez, the Cook PVI is insane.
Becky is not running. There's no like competitor in that
No.
that one. But
That's not what hurt me. In 2024, Trump won 76 to 22 in this
oh,
district.
oh,
Oh
well,
no.
well.
Okay. Becky Still, you know what? We made fun of you earlier for your terrible stance on immigration, but you know what? I salute your service. Thank you for running in a district that's miserable. Like that's okay.
well, her competitor is Adrian Smith. So and he's the incumbent. So yeah,
Okay.
you know
Who
what, Becky,
who
you're
lives
good.
in
You're
this
good.
who lives in this district? The people who wrote the Turner Diaries? What are we doing here? Like they voted for Trump by 54%. The PVI is plus 27. I've never seen a number that high. That's
Uh, you know what? You know what? Because Nebraska is also unique in the presidential election because they split up their electoral votes for congressional district, and
Mhm.
it like District 3 and District 1 are both like Republican. They both went for Trump, I believe, but like District 2 is an outlier. They are a blue dot surrounded by red. I don't know um,
okay.
what Iowa thinks because they're neighbor to East Iowa. I don't know if they're red as well, but if they are, they're like surrounded by red. They're a dot of blue in a sea of red. And
Yeah.
I kind of admire their tenacity to vote blue every few years.
So yeah, I'm gonna crash out on this slightly, but yet again in the my 100 certified narrative of Dan Osborne has a chance to win Nebraska. He's also interesting. If he wins, he says he's not going to caucus with the Dems or Republicans. So every for the first time in a long time, they're going, instead of being able to label independent candidates as caucusing with the Dems or Republicans like Bernie Sanders and Angus King do, and then Joe Manchin for a little bit. I think he switched to independent. Either he did or what was her
Not
name?
mansion.
Either way, yeah, Cinema.
Cinema, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't like her. We do like Bernie. Angus King, we don't talk about him. We just ignore him.
Yeah.
Uh, in the 2024 Senate elections in Nebraska, District 3 voted for Ricketts 79 to 21 over a Dem, but voted for Fisher only 67 to 33 over Dan Osborne. That's a 12% improvement. That he got an additional 12% of the vote, not 12% improvement. He almost doubled the total by going from 21 to 33%. Now, however, this district does seem to be populated entirely um, by esoteric Hitlerists. So because of that, I don't know if they voted for Dan Osborne more because Dan Osborne's cool and wasn't a Democrat, or they voted for him more because Deb Fisher's a woman and they were scared of a woman being a senator. So I don't actually know. This is the district that has a plus 50% Trump vote. So I'm being a bit dramatic for humorous purposes. But Ricketts actually outran Trump in this district 79 to 21, where Fisher got almost 10% less than Trump did. So yeah, I don't know what's happening here. Um, oh, okay. I was going to do an interesting discussion with Karsh and Hieramius and Lilith about when a candidate's personal life is so terrible that you shouldn't vote for them, even though you like their policies more than the options. But we have the West Virginia Senate race has just been called for the Dem primary.
Yes, I have here. I have sources telling me. God, it sounds
Who are
so
your
fancy, but
sources? Is your source Kornacki?
Mm.
no, I'm afraid not. But they are actually projecting Rachel Anderson as the winner in the Democratic Senate primary. She still has like 33.1% of the votes, 30,537 votes, compared to Kessler's 24,881 votes. That's 27% of the vote. But with 88.7% votes in, they're already declaring Anderson the winner. I suppose it's because the estimated remaining amount of votes is 12,000. Maybe they aren't seeing any way for Kessler to to lead at this point, but they're already calling it for Anderson. On the map here, she is
So are
leading
we.
in
I can, if
on
I could be the new Steve Kornacki, that would be.
Yeah, let's get Karshnacki up for a second to talk about the what we're seeing
exactly.
in the results, and then we'll
So
get me to.
we definitely have a slightly different count here, but I am also saying that seeing that we have declared a winner out of 64% reporting, roughly 70,000 votes to your 88,000 that you reported on High Remus. But with that, we see 35.9% going to Anderson across the state. So we can see where in the state of West Virginia, around DC area, like we were talking about before, she has a dominance in vote counts in all of these districts. You can see Berkeley with over 42% of the vote, 47% in Hampshire. And as we start to go around the board, we're also seeing towards the area of Charleston. Oh, I just pulled out of the map there. In Charleston area, which is metropolitan, um, we're seeing that's actually outside the district. That's Kanawha, not Charleston, but these are the outskirts surrounding Charleston. And it looks like Kessler has a good lead there. I would say the majority of votes are somewhere hidden in here for Anderson, but enough to give us a disparity of about 5,000 votes there. Let's see where that could have come from. Wood County here, 1,600 to that. Yeah. West Virginia has pretty small populations, guys. Well, who would have thought?
I know, right? Crazy.
Oh, here we go. Back to the larger county of Monongalia, like we saw before. We have a 70, nearly 67.7% exactly to Jeffrey Kessler's 1,300 votes at 17%. This district right here has determined the biggest disparity of votes.
So yeah, this is actually a interesting case study here because you have five candidates, right?
Right.
Uh, and we are looking at a situation wherein the winner was Rachel Fetty Anderson, who I gave a 3.5 out of 7, exactly half on the New Deal Dem score. Um, but something interesting that happened, if you want to show the overall results, it's slightly different, very close though to the actual results, where Rachel Anderson's at 33.1%, Kessler's at 27, Shrewsbury's at 16.1, Thornton Cooper's at 12.8, and Rio Phillips is at 11%. And this actually brings a really interesting discussion now that we know Fetty Anderson won. And she's fine. She's fine. I'm okay with this. Like, this is, if I was voting, I probably vote for Anderson because I'm not a big protest vote person. If I know it's going to be between Anderson and Kessler, I'm going to vote for Anderson because Kessler's, I didn't, the only good thing Kessler had on his website was that Kessler had this like next gen voters thing, which was cool of him to do, where he was like trying to reach out to young people. I don't think he did a very good job, but nonetheless, he was trying. So I have to appreciate the nice him for being. Oh wait, actually, it was someone else who did that. Never mind. I can't even talk about him because it was someone else. But he's got some good opioid crisis stuff. That's what it was. That was good.
The
But when
point
you look
stands
at
though, right?
point
Races
stands,
need to be competitive. Yeah.
yes. But what is interesting here is that when you add together the results of Shrewsbury, Cooper, and Phillips, right? That's 20. That is going to be 40% on the, sorry, 39.9%, which is 6% more than Rachel Anderson. And the reason why this is interesting is because Zach Shrewsbury was an opener for Bernie Sanders fighting oligarchy tour. And he, initially, I had him on my New Deal Dems list way back in the day, even before it was one, as just like a candidate to watch. And he would have gotten nearly a perfect 7, if not a 7. I can't remember his stance on abolishing ICE, but I know on all the other issues he had the maximum you could get, which was 1 point each. So he had at least a 6, which would have been at worst tied for second best candidate we've covered tonight. Uh, Second only to Eric Moyer, unfortunately, who did not end up winning. Nonetheless, that's pretty good, right? But the reason why he wasn't my guy, and the reason why, despite him having this like almost Graham Plattner-esque meteoric rise, was because he's had a couple scandals, including allegations of misconduct, which seemed pretty concerning, and also in like not personal diss news, but just in the news of like potential issue. I believe he got a cancer diagnosis, and those were the two main things he was in the news for: was the misconduct allegations and the cancer. So he wasn't seen as a particularly strong candidate. The reason why I add together Thornton and Rio Phillips is because Rio Phillips's campaign page, he talks about how he idolizes Bernie Sanders and wants to be like him, and has this executive summary about Medicare for all and other similarly progressive, if not openly leftist policies. And then you look
Mm.
at Thornton Cooper, and Thornton Cooper is also running on very progressive leftist policies. I even have
Wow.
Rio Phillips here saying the words end endless wars. And what I'm wondering happened here, in my opinion, is that the real progressive, oh, this guy's, Rio Phillips has a No Kings Act. I actually really like this guy. I don't love that it's a Google Doc that I'm scrolling through on his website, but I do like the man. I like what he's running on. This guy seems cool. And then Thornton Cooper, same deal. He's running on raising the basic minimum wage to 15 an hour in West Virginia, establishing universal health care and the war in Iran, repeal Big Beautiful Bill, increase funding for hospitals, public education. Like, he's a progressive guy too. He's not as left as the two of them, but he's might be to the left of, I think he's to the left of Anderson pretty notably, especially because of his
Mm.
Medicare for All support. So you had a three-way split between the leftist vote because Shrewsbury, despite being the most charismatic of them, had some personal failings. And
Imagine
this
that.
is a although this is a bad sign for left unity, and this reminds me of District 9 in Illinois, when a candidate that had a viable shot of winning was a leftist, but they didn't unite under him. Sorry, under her in this case, Cataboo. I don't think they necessarily should have united under Zach for those personal life issues that I mentioned. But if they united together, they might have beaten both Anderson and Kessler's votes, and that's assuming no one would have voted for Shrewsbury if it weren't for his misconduct allegations and other personal issues. Like, if it weren't for those issues, I'm sure some Anderson Kessler voters vote for him, right? So if that doesn't happen, he probably runs away with it, which is a good sign for a progressive populist New Deal Dem run in the next Senate primary in West Virginia. But the question I wanted to ask the group is, where's your line, or when do you think policy matters less than character or something else specific about a candidate? Because I'm a pretty policy first guy, but I have lines I won't cross. And I'm curious what the rest of the table here thinks about, when does policy stop mattering in an election? When does something else matter more than policy?
Yeah, I would like to hop in on that one. Electability is a huge line for me. And if we as progressives are just fighting ourselves in terms of, well, like what you just described is, the progressive vote out percentages, the centrist who's winning, right? And if you combine them all and they all get on the same page, or if you implement something like ranked choice voting, then Brad Linder and Zoran Mamdani take the primary, right? And give each other the space that we should be doing as candidates, in places that don't have ranked choice voting, ideally, obviously nowhere else. Um, right, the vote needs to be understood like that, where we have a fair system providing the chance to win as a progressive. And I think that candidates need to be more humble in that space, which is a very tall ask when we have people wanting to run out of passion for their policy, right? But
Yeah,
there's a line where electability makes sense. And if you're tracking along the races right before you decide to go into election day and vote for yourself, you should also consider voting for your team, right? And
yeah,
and that to me is where the line is. If you read the room and you understand where polls are and you understand a lot of the concessions and agreements and compromises that we make among our own tent, right? It's like if we need to fall towards a strategy where Democrats have had success, Republicans have had success as parties, and their established ways of, supporting one candidate, giving them all their donations, right? Giving them the apparatus to really run unopposed in their established policies, then we should do the same. Progressives should also consolidate the best they can to win races. And that's a tough ask, but that's where I draw the line.
yeah. Lilith or Hieramius, what do you guys think?
I think it's a little bit more than policy for me. Their values also have to reflect their policy, but policy is definitely most important. I don't know if there is a line for me to choose electability over policy at all.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, I say this because I say more prior assurance. I say this because we had this primary. I had this primary back last June where we had one candidate who was a former governor, right? He was a former governor, but he resigned because of these uh, alleged sexual harassment claims and statements and situations, and it that kind of throws people off. If you have that history, then you should not be elected into politics. But in terms of that, he luckily did not win. There was a broad coalition saying, "Hey, rank this guy first, rank this guy second. Don't rank promo at all," because we also have ranked choice voting as well. So I would probably say prior history and prior experience. I'll probably say more about prior experience as well because in politics is a bit of a long game of convincing people that you're the right guy or the right person who will bring out this policy, et cetera. And you could be convinced about that, but if you let them and then they go on and cause a lot of problems, they screw things up, etc., then that's a bit of a problem. So for me, the line is if you have experience in a certain field or in a way, or if you have prior experience that in a way will uh, help you, it will convince you to pick uh, an option that's beneficial for everyone, then I think that's the line for me. And again, if you have bad history, like those alleged harassment claims, then yeah, that's bad. That's bad.
Oh, they're a little worse than harassment. To
For
put it,
me,
Yeah,
the only thing I purity test is humility. Is if you're able to step down for now and be part of the greater kind of mission of, you know, policy and enactment through election, right? Then there you go. That seems like a solid reason to support someone, right? Um, and so if that actually happens, it takes a lot of the grassroots support to get it done, right? Um, I think there's a lot of strategy involved with how specific organizations like Political Revolution, my own, right, does involve themselves in races, and also helps support campaigns that are showing that kind of value towards getting elected as a progressive. So yeah, I'll reaffirm that you're all definitely saying that electability is not the only important thing. Progressive values and policy needs to be true, but we get kind of hampered by the purity testing that comes with that a lot of the time. And whether you end up with a Kirsten Cinema after that, you can't really know until you hold them accountable. So to me, knowing that a candidate is ready to compromise, is where I would draw the line.
yeah, I mean,
However,
I'm from the lens of sort of a less severe example, but I'm in California and we have a lot of primaries. We have our primaries coming up. And the governor race has been the one that you get the most talk and discussion over. You got people who are big on Becerra. You got some that are riding for Steyer. You got some that are still holding on for Porter, right? Then you got the Matt Mahan fans, but I feel like if you're falling for the Peter Thiel supported candidate, that's on you at that point. When the Roblox CEO is donating to you, like, come on, right? Like, I'm just gonna make fun of Matt Mahan for a second. I have my own bias. At this point, like, your class trader's favorite class trader might actually be the best option. Nonetheless, the one that has much more of like a personal value, personal stake issue for me is the LA mayor race. And the reason why that one is because you have two candidates who are self-described Democratic socialists, self-described leftists running. And one of them, Nithya Rahman, is polling at the most recent poll 16%, just outside the top two. Karen Bass has, I think, 22, and Spencer Pratt is 18%. Spencer Pratt is like a former reality TV star who's like a bad guy. I don't really understand his whole deal. And Karen Bass has been terrible for Los Angeles. So Nithya Rahman is like, what, 2 percentage points up? She gets in. She probably beats Bass or Pratt one on one. Then you get a DSA member, a city council member who's done some really good work, had some really good votes, has done a lot for the homeless population in Los Angeles, especially in her district, and also for like working class people in her district. She's had some great policies. But then there's also Ray Huang, and Ray Huang was running on the left flank about 3 months before Nithya was, and was starting to gain some real traction before Nithya jumped in on literally the last day. And she's like a housing for all policy advocate. She's done a lot for housing and rent protections, and she's only polling at like 6%. But then you have Nithya Rahman, who's had a pretty bad vote supporting Israel and or no, sorry, there was just taking some support from groups who are supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza, even though Nathia Rahman hasn't herself, from my understanding, supported it nonetheless, and has also voted to increase funding for the LAPD. and supported some of their horrible policies, which is horrific to see. But at the same time, Ray Huang released a statement the other day that despite her being a very progressive housing for all candidate, the actual policies she was advocating for in the tweet were not particularly beneficial for working class people in Los Angeles. So you have these candidates who have some real upside, some real policy knowledge or nonprofit experience. And then you have Ray, who is probably a better leftist than Nithya is, but she's polling significantly behind Nithya. But then Nithya has these real red marks behind her, but then Ray's not perfect either. And if that gave you, dear viewers, headaches, believe me, I've had a headache about this for over a week and it hasn't gotten better. And so like I don't know what to do because like from a moral purity stance, I'd probably pick Ray over Nithya, despite my qualms about some of Ray's record. But if I'm going for Nithya's just so close to beating Pratt, right? So it's like it's a real tough thing. I'm like electability versus policy, but also values. And I'm struggling if like this if Ray's main policy is something she's failing on, well then I'd probably go more Nithya's route. But then Nithya has these large issues, and DSA didn't endorse either of them. So what am I supposed to do? They're both DSA members, and DSA didn't endorse them. It's like you guys can't even pick between your two options. So like, how can I? So, I get a lot of questions about it. And when my answer is always to shrug, people get disappointed because usually they come to me for electoral hot takes. And I'm a pretty straight shooter on that. I'll tell people what I think, even if I'm wrong, even if I'm loudly wrong. At least I'll be honest about it. But, like, I just don't have an answer for people. I don't know. What would you guys do based on that information?
I don't know. I've never really been in that position. So like in the South, even local, we do not have any Democrats or any leftists at all. So I guess my perception of how I would vote is based off of my culture and area. So I feel like that's maybe why mine is so different, and I have no idea how I would vote for that, honestly.
Yeah, it's I mean, I suppose I'm in a better situation than you are. I feel like Karen Bass would be an improvement compared to most of your representatives. And here's me shit talking Karen Bass because she sucks. But she's probably still be an improvement over most of your folks. So like, it is a different situation. It's like, why can't we be as progressive as we say we are? Not how do we get the fascists out of power, right? Like that's sort of different. We have a different problem here in California.
Well,
Uh,
for the South, I correct me if I'm wrong, Lilith. I do think that there's a good argument against conservative arguments and having people just run anyways, as part of like a mission or a wave or whatever you want to call it, right? Because progressive policy and values can actually work in a lot of places, I would hope, to convince people of those values arguments, right? And also tapering policies in a lot of way, kind of framing them in a way that educates and makes sure that it's not offending in the way that conservative mindsets might feel. And I don't know whether it's true or not. It has to be tested, of course, and it's like something that I think is feared a lot in the South because we're just entrenched in two-party politics with a single party, owning unopposed seats in most cases. But in my view, we still try, even in that fear, right?
Yeah, of course. Like, I think where I live, it's not about anything other than believing what they see online and what other people speak. So if you're like me talking to someone, they're like, "Oh, you're the crazy one." So it's you have to meet them where they are, but very, very, very slowly, especially for a not very educated area.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
hard to
we
fight.
have seeing that things got closed to 9:45. I still don't see any polls. Everything's fully closed. I still don't see any real shifts though.
Yeah,
And
no, I was just hearing from chatter in Twitch chat that the next set of numbers are coming in at 9:45 Central. But if you're not seeing it updated, it might just be
It
delayed for, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it is a little bit rolling in. For District 2, it's still close. Actually, I did calculate it. But yeah, I had Powell at like 16,727 votes, but that's dropped. Hold on, I might be looking at the wrong thing. What in the world am I looking at? Hold on.
Kavanaugh and Powell, yeah. So hasn't updated on my end. Still looking at Omaha for Kavanaugh, leading him to 39%.
Yeah. Also,
Sorry.
Nebraska state secretary race, four Dems and four Republicans, both of them were contested. Sarah Slattery has destroyed with 91.1% compared to Lee Simple's 8.9%, which makes sense given that Lee doesn't even have a profile picture on the NBC News. However, Bob Evnen, the incumbent, is currently trailing Scott Peterson, 53,000 votes to 46,903. Let me see what is happening
That's
there.
that is with 127,000 votes still remaining as well, with 44.2% expected votes in. So
Yeah, but
that's a close race.
he's still down, right? Like that's fascinating. It's let me look to see if so like Evnen is the incumbent and he is making election security like a central part of his campaign, right? And he
Yep.
is running to um he handed over uh sensitive voter data to the US Department of Justice. But why is he getting primaried? Is he getting primaried because Peterson is a past chair of the Douglas County Republican Party, a delegate to the convention? He'd prioritize constitutional governments, make um, not special interests. He said there's a lack of trust in election systems. So I can't tell if Scott Peterson is running because Bob Evnen is seen as a hack, or if Scott Peterson is running because Bob Evnen is not pro MAGA enough. That's sort of the question, right?
We just got the graphic up. Thank you very much, Karch.
Yep.
And looking at the map here, Lincoln, Lancaster County, where city Lincoln is, currently Evan is leading by 55.7% to Pierce's 44.3%. But looking at everywhere else, it's like Pearson's leading by pretty large margins. Omaha. Let's go to Douglas for a moment. Thank you very much. Because that's where Omaha is, and Pearson is leading 53 to 47. Um, so I mean it's a bit close there. 55.2% of results in. Um, Everywhere else, it feels like the margins are a bit high. For example, I got Cherry County with 95% in. That's a huge. That's the I believe largest county in Nebraska right now, and Pearson's leading 59.7% to Evans for 40.3%. Um, yeah. I wonder what's going on in Nebraska right now. Yeah.
Hmm. I apparently there's some like intra. There's a lot of intra fighting here. Retiring Rep Don Bacon called Peterson the president of the Tinfoil Hat Club for his
Mhm.
criticisms of election integrity in a state like Nebraska. And Peterson also posted some comments about Jews in Israel that some people claimed were anti-Semitic. I'm going to see if Don Bacon was claiming that they were. I'm curious what the posts were. Oh, okay. If I'm reading between the lines here, um, oh boy, I shouldn't read some of these out loud. These have, let's just put it lightly. There's like some uh, Scott Peterson had some questionable claims about Israel's alleged role, according to Scott Peterson, and not any reliable source, about Israel's role in Charlie Kirk's death, which is interesting.
Oh man,
Yeah, and also some stuff that's just like insane. Um, I'm like, I
tinfoil
don't
isn't
know.
far off. You're actually right. about something.
Yeah,
And
he
he's
oh
leading.
yeah,
He's
he's
leading.
leading and oh yep, the other one actually I found a much worse one. What the Republican representative was posting screenshots. Hold on, I feel like people need to see. Like I'm going insane here. The Republican Party, the Republican representative of Nebraska District 2, Don Bacon, who is retiring, right? He's the incumbent Nebraskan representative. He was on Twitter screenshotting Facebook posts from Scott Peterson, and he and his inner circle, I guess he's got like an inner circle team. It's actually more of his inner circle than him. We're posting straight up "Jews will not replace us" claims. Don Bacon was screenshotting Peterson supporters and inner circle members in Facebook and then posting it on Twitter. That's how deep this fight goes.
Wow. No, I can't believe. I don't believe it.
Yeah, like
I
it's right
don't
there.
believe
No,
it.
it wasn't Peterson himself saying that, but then Peterson himself is like defending those claims. Which, like, what?
And
Um,
they're electing him for
They're
this.
electing
They
him.
want the Republicans want this guy.
well, yeah. Uh, Peterson said, Peterson said he denounced anti-Semitism, obviously, but Bacon has been consistently posting, being like, "Hey, this Peterson guy's insane, hysterical. This is an all-time. So like, if so, you got Scott Peterson, who is the uh, he whose staffers all appear to be boomer Nick Fuentes watchers, right? Versus Bob Evnen, the current guy who has handed over sensitive voter data to Trump. I don't think Peterson will refuse those orders. I think Peterson will do the same thing. So Peterson's definitely probably a worse option. So if you're rooting for harm reduction, you're probably rooting for Bob Evnen here. But if you're rooting for best chance of Nebraskan Democrat to beat the Republican, you're probably rooting for Sarah Slattery at this point because you're hoping that Sarah Slattery beats Scott Peterson, right? So you're probably rooting for Peterson because Bob Evans more likely to survive a general election challenge. Maybe. I don't know actually because if a Republican decides to run against him on a third party ticket, because I think Peterson's the kind of insane guy that would do it, he probably splits the race in three, and then Sarah Slattery climbs to first place. So yeah, what you're probably hoping for is Bob Evans to win just barely. So Scott Peterson's like, the elections were rigged. I'm going to run third party and beat them, and then Sarah Slattery gets 60% of the vote and takes over Nebraska. So that's probably the vote. That's probably the move there. But I'm so glad I clicked the Secretary of State tab because I didn't think anything interesting was happening there, and I was wrong.
If if I may explain to the folks watching who might not know what the Nebraska Secretary of State does, according to Wikipedia quote, uh, they have responsibilities over the following areas: elections, business services, occupational licensing, state rules, regulations, records management, international relations, and the youth civics programs. But I want to focus more on the elections part because if if they're electing a guy who believes in that kind of thing, right? You're electing a guy who's gonna be the head honcho in terms of elections, the elections, and that's a bit scary, don't you think? That the guy who believes in all of that is the guy that is head honcho in terms of local and state elections.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I guess a good example for people who don't know about how important a Secretary of State is, is if you were listening to this, you probably recognize the name Brad Raffensperger. Like that name might ring a bell if you read it or see it. And the reason is because he was Georgia's Secretary of State. Actually, he's the current Secretary of State. He's still the incumbent, and he refused to recount the election results in Georgia, um, because despite Trump attempting to coerce him to do so in violation of, quite frankly, every norms and values we have in this country. There was a 12,000 vote difference, which wasn't enough for there to be an automatic recount. And Raffensperger was ordered by Trump to find, and I'm using the quotes like the exact words were find, to find enough votes to overturn the Georgia presidential election results. and he threatened Raffensperger. Raffensperger failed to do so. If Raffensperger recounts and puts his thumb on the scale, you might see massively different presidential results. But because Raffensperger stood strong as Secretary of State and refused to give in to the federal demands, the election integrity, which Republicans are so fear-mongering about, was actually maintained, which protected the rights of every person in Georgia to vote. So Secretary of State's really important if you care about your vote being protected from hackers and scammers and people like Donald Trump or Elon Musk. So Scott Peterson is, if Don Bacon is warning the world about Scott Peterson, you have a problem with Scott Peterson. And Bob Evans, not a good guy either. So here's to hoping Sarah Slattery pulls it out. But I'd much rather be Evans than Peterson in a vacuum.
If I may, also, as I mentioned earlier, Nebraska splits up their electoral votes into congressional districts. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a blue dot in Nebraska around the Omaha area where they vote Democrats compared to like being surrounded by folks who vote Republican in the electoral vote. So come 2028, when we get the next presidential election, if you have Scott Peterson up as Secretary of State, um, I I have a bad feeling that he could try and cause enough of a ruckus where the blue dot might not become blue anymore. And this is a situation. This is also where a situation where every electoral vote counts as well. Battleground states and like. So that's it, yeah. If Scott Peterson does win, in general, it might be interesting for 2028.
Yeah. It could be. It could, especially when you consider you have the whole Nebraska split electoral system, right? Where not all the votes go to the same person. Let me make sure I'm explaining the electoral districts properly. In the presidential elections, they award 2 electoral votes based on the statewide popular vote, and then they award 1 vote each for each of the 3 congressional districts. So District 2 and District 1 could be potentially swinging towards, one or both of them could be swinging towards a Democratic nominee for president, and especially as you see them supporting Senate or even congressional members. But you could see a situation where one or both of those congressional districts swing slightly blue, where District 3 is so massively red that Republicans still get 3 votes in the Electoral College. But getting 2 from Nebraska would be huge when we're talking about very small margins in these elections. Let's loop back around to West Virginia districts 1 and 2, and then I want to, because we're not going to get many more results, but we did a West Virginia race got called, but we're not going to get very many more results tonight. So I'd love to pivot to talking about a couple future races on the docket. But before we do, we should cover West Virginia real quick.
Here's House
Looking
1.
at House District 1 Democratic primary, yes, that one.
Yeah, it appears that George has beaten Aguirre, according to the most recent data that we have, at 53 to 47, so slightly ahead of Vince George, slightly ahead of Britta Aguirre, but ahead enough where he is able to pull out a win, and NBC News Decision 2026 has called it for George, which is unfortunate because Britt Aguirre had the highest New Deal Dem score of the day at 6.5. The only reason why she didn't have a full 7 was she's only a public option supporter and not a Medicare for All supporter, compared to Vince George, who was a solid 1 out of 7, which is deeply, deeply unfortunate. Deeply unfortunate. So that race, unfortunately, has been called, unless there's been some large mistake. We are looking at a Vince George win, which is an L, in my opinion, but nonetheless, best elected Vince George in the general election. What do we have in District 2?
District 2, let's pull it out.
I can tell you it's close. It's both close and there's not a lot of votes left to count.
So it is
we
close.
Yeah, and it's with 96.9% of the votes in. So, uh, looking at Part C, we currently have them at 40.9%. On NBC, it's a bit different, but nonetheless, it doesn't really matter because they're close. For NBC, for example, if I can do a calculation fairly quickly, blah blah blah. Yeah, according to NBC, they're both separated by 855 votes, and mind you, there's only like 1,500 votes left in the House District 2 primary. Stephen Wendland's probably not gonna make it to the finishing line. He's like all the way down with 20.5%. Yeah, 20.5% according to our metrics. Um, I feel like it's too close to call in this situation. I also want to touch on, yeah, I actually also want to touch very briefly on Nebraska House District 2
Sure.
Democrat primary because NBC is declaring that race too close to call. And if you look at the metrics, um, they have Kavanaugh leading with 15,533 votes, and then Powell with 15,246 votes. That is, they're separated by 287 votes. Um, Mind you, with 84.7% of the expected votes in and only 7,500 votes left to count, yeah, this could well go into the night. This could, I don't see it being called until probably the next morning. And if you remember last stream when we covered, I believe, Indiana, there's a race that was also like too close to call, very similar. And I think by the end, there was one candidate who was like leading by like 3 votes. So, uh,
Mhm.
one, every vote counts, and two, we might be seeing a repeat, not with like one election, but with 2 elections here tonight.
Denise
Yeah.
Powell really pulling close with Omaha here. She brought a lot of votes in to even the score. Just there, only 500 difference in votes. She's got some votes to pull from Omaha, I'm sure. This is going to be a close one.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to come down to the wire there, and I would say, in my opinion, looking at the differential between the two candidates, you really, really want Kavanaugh to pull through on this. Again, like he's a look, like some people might say J Street and go like, J Street, but like when the option is between like a moderate Dem and like a seat congressional progressive caucus Dem who's having millions of dark money being spent in a race against him, including by pro-Israel groups. Yeah, you want someone like Kavanaugh from that progressive perspective. Again, we're looking at like a 5 out of 7 on the New Deal Dem index compared to a 1 out of 7 for Denise Powell. Sure, Melanie Williams or one of the other minor candidates in there might be better than both of them, but we're coming down to the wire, and when it's going to be a difference of potentially a few hundred votes, that could massively change the course of the district's future when you consider that this district is almost certainly an easy blue pickup in 2026 for either
Yeah.
side. And now there's some nuance here because people have alleged that because Kavanaugh is a representative in Nebraska's legislature, Nebraska's legislature, that if he wins, he will vacate the seat and the governor will attempt to appoint a hardline conservative to his district. But there's enough contested races in the Nebraska primary at the state level, like the local seats, right? People representing the state senate, state legislature districts in Nebraska, that it's unlikely that Kavanaugh's one seat is going to be the difference, and the Nebraska Republican Party is expected to lose seats in this election. So that's probably not a fair and salient talking point, but it is still a genuine concern that some people have, which leads them to vote for Powell, even if maybe Powell knows better. But if Kavanaugh can pull out that win, having again, I'm going to just hit on this point, a congressional progressive caucus member in Nebraska would be a massive cultural shift from where we were even 2 years ago.
As
I'm
a
rooting for
time check,
Kavanaugh.
I was just gonna say as the time check is currently 11:09 p.m. So it's like a bit late, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to get any more clarity on either West Virginia District 2 or Nebraska District 2, the only outstanding seats, I believe, right? That's what we're waiting on, just those two.
And it might be a long night for those two. Yeah.
Yeah, we might not find out. We can double check right when we end stream, but before we do, I do want to turn ahead and look at some races that are coming up, especially from the political revolution lens. Cars, you got some stuff
Yeah.
to pull up?
Yeah. So I'm going to take a look here at Pennsylvania, which is having their elections next week. We'll be also streaming for them the Democratic primaries. And that is on May 19th. We have a couple of candidates that I wanted to scope in on, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up, let's see, Bob Brooks. Bob is a firefighter. He is running for Congress in District PA 200, I believe. Let me just double check. And I think we were at the point where we were making some slogans for Bob one day, and it was like he will put out the fires that we are facing in our battle contentious country, and that was something he probably wouldn't use for his District 7 campaign whatsoever. But he stands on a lot of progressive policies that we wanted to absolutely highlight. So I'm pulling up Pennsylvania 7's race just to show you the district map and what we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay, how does this audio sound now? A couple people were commenting that they're having slight audio issues with the stream, and I'm seeing that this is an improvement.
Well, if you're louder, it's the zoom on the stream itself that's not as loud. So you're definitely good there, I think.
I just saw one of our chatters saying that this is a massive improvement. I actually adjusted my audio settings slightly. So, is anyone's ears bleeding or are we good now?
Well, I had to decrease my my volume. I'm on my iPad, and I had to decrease it a little bit, lest my ears start to explode or something.
Sorry, back to what Karsh was saying. I just wanted to make sure that we were fixing the technical issues.
All good, all good. So I'm trying to pull it up on the map, but unfortunately it's not able to go out all the way to May 19th next week to determine. But the other candidate I wanted to talk about was Chris Rabb out of Pennsylvania 200. So bear with me here. I'm going to drill into Pennsylvania. So we've got the PA 200 district out in.
Talking about Chris Rabb, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm having some difficulty finding PA 200 here.
Hey, while you do,
Northwest Philadelphia.
Yeah. Chris Rabb is a great option. I just want to say a fun fact that hasn't gotten a ton of play was that in Wisconsin's 3rd district, a race that I do not believe, let me just check. Wisconsin's primary is happening, I believe, in August 11th. But in the 3rd district, Bernie Sanders announced his endorsement of Democrat Rebecca Cook for Congress, who is running again in Wisconsin District 3. Chris Rabb is also endorsed by Bernie. But what's fascinating about Rebecca Cook is she has also been endorsed by the Blue Dogs Democrats PAC, which is a moderate to conservative Democrat PAC, which is a fascinating cross section when you have Bernie and other progressive leftists endorsing the same person that the Blue Dog Dems are also endorsing. Fascinating, and I love it. I love to see that because it shows that her strong union first approach is sort of uniting across the aisle. I actually think Chris Rabb would be a good candidate for similar crossover support for people across the spectrum, just because he's got some strong leftist values, but in a way that's particularly appealing to a large swath of voters. But have you been able to pull it up yet, Karsh? Or should I keep
Unfortunately
filibustering?
not. I'm gonna pass on it because it's not loading any races for the map here. So let's just go back. I don't mind, sharing this on another segment.
Yeah. All right. I mean, even if we can't pull up the map, we can still just talk about it person to person. If you want to talk about the some of the races that you guys have highlighted.
Those are the two really. As I was kind of alluding to all night, Paul Riv is absolutely progressive. Oregon, we help find these candidates across all the different states that we do research into, and Bob Brooks is running an electable race. That's the thing about this that we want to stress is we find candidates like these in states that we find to be battlegrounds for progressives. So take a look at Bob Brooks's policies, right? Um, when I look at his platform, we're talking about affordability as the main and first primary policy that is affecting the working class, those in labor, and what that looks like for um, the entire coalition around these issues of affordability. It's the most important thing. Um, Ending affordability in the sense of healthcare, rent, childcare, utilities, retirement, everyday goods are his pillar platforms. Um, and healthcare being the first one there is, something that he talks about heavily in the Bernie umbrella around supporting Medicare for all. This is a staple progressive platform that we are always in support of here at Paul Rev. So it's almost like it has to tick the box before we even consider that is a candidate we may even support.
Hey, so this is going to be some real ball knowers were mad at me moment. But when you're looking at Bob Brooks's endorsements page, he is one of the other people. I knew Rebecca Cook was relevant, but I was thinking it was Chris Rabb. It's not. Bob Brooks is also endorsed by Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, the Working Families Party, and the Blue Dog Pack. So you're looking at Our Revolution, Red to Blue, and Citizens United, Congressional Progressive Caucus, and also people like Mayor Pete, Ruben Gallego, Josh Shapiro. So you get people across the political spectrum. Local unions that are more progressive, more conservative, local officials ranging from the mayor of Allentown to state senators and representatives from districts across the state. So you're seeing a large coalition of progressives, again, like Ro Khanna, like J. Paul, like Maxwell Frost, and conservatives like Ford Dems, like Jamie Raskin, who are coming together behind one person. And that's fantastic to see that sort of level of mutual support. Meanwhile, Ryan Crosswell only has Derek Tran, Max Rose, and Alexander Vindman. Vindman, who hasn't actually said anything about the way the Supreme Court's voting rights decisions has negatively affected people of color and also all Americans. So, not great record there. And some of the other members, Carol Durston has a couple interesting congressional endorsements and some various groups, including Emily's List and the Latino Victory Fund and 314 Action. But generally speaking, and I guess like Susan Wild, former PAO7 up until this point, but when you're looking at the disparity between both the amount of high quality endorsements and the depth of endorsements, it really emphasizes that Bob Brooks' messaging and his policies that Karsh was talking about are really reaching people. When you can get Democratic elected officials and groups that hate each other's guts to come together to support someone, you either have a real winner or a real loser. And when it's Bernie jumping on board, you know it's a real winner.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Mayor Pete jumping in is a huge win in this, more so
Yes.
because, the fact that we're seeing Democrats, staunch Democrats, established Democrats, looking at a candidate that is supported completely by unions. We're finally getting to a point where we're considering, the labor class as the the actual thing that Democrats should be looking at. And this candidate reaches across the blue aisle, right? Whatever you may call it. It's actually showing that there's some form of endorsement from both sides in a strategy that's going to win. So yeah, this is one of the few examples that we see an endorsement from Bernie and Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah. And yeah, like even the Raskin thing, maybe I was playing a little bit too much on his third way credentials. I mean, the guy was an impeachment case manager and his co-sponsors blocked the bombs, although a lot of Democrats have switched on that issue. So I guess he's more of a median Democrat than a moderate Democrat. But yeah, when people like Mayor Pete, who is a little bit more third way coded compared to someone like Bernie, at least, you are reaching a much larger uh spread of people. And I think that you're right. Like when you have Mayor Pete and Ro Khanna and Bernie and Warren all riding behind the same person, and Josh Shapiro, who is an actual conservative Dem, that's fascinating. Like that's a real win to get Josh Shapiro to support you, even as someone who is a noted Josh Shapiro hater. Josh,
Mhm.
maybe you shouldn't have let your attorney general's office, back when you were attorney general, defend ruling a case, a self-decided death when they were stabbed in the back 20 times. Maybe if you want my support, Josh, you wouldn't have done that. Maybe you would have called for an investigation into an obvious murder instead of letting the autopsy report, instead of having it case closed. I'm just saying, guy's a little bit corrupt, nonetheless, and pro data center for some reason. But nonetheless, being able to be so persuasive of a candidate that even Josh Shapiro has to sign on to a Bernie approved candidate. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And sort of pointed, harp on, and I use the New Deal Dem and other metrics to sort of get at different points, but the basic division in the party right now is between Bernie's, Warren's, and Biden's, right? Bernie's being like real leftist, democratic socialist, people like Mamdani or Abdul El Sayed. And then you have Warren types who are like more maybe progressive Dems, but you definitely wouldn't call them um leftists, right? Like people like Mallory McMorrow or Daniel Biss or Elizabeth Warren. People who are
Mhm.
progressive but aren't leftist or aren't very, very, very progressive. They're just pretty progressive. And then you have like Joe Biden types who are like the third way, more centrist, moderate Democrats. Now, Joe Biden would be a pretty good Joe Biden Democrat. I like him more than most of the Joe Biden Democrats, much more than like a Haley Stevens. But that's sort of the fundamental like in a lot of Democratic primaries, you're seeing the Joe Biden candidate facing off against the Warren candidate, facing off against the Bernie candidate. And sometimes, but more often than not, you see the Warren types winning. But when the Bernies, Warrens, and Bidens are all uniting under the Bernie, that's how you know you got some real special sauce going on. Because you got the future Biden of the 2020 presidential race, Shapiro, teaming up with literally just Warren and Bernie, the two archetypical examples, all endorsing the same person, which is great to see. So I love that Paul Rev is in the Bob Brooks game, and I'm also, maybe this makes me too much like Hassan Piker, and maybe they'll create a condemn Hunter Dunn resolution in Congress someday. But either way, just like Hassan Piker, but also Ro Khanna, Summer Lee, AOC, Ilhan Omar, even Jimmy Raskin, and a lot of other progressives and median Dems are all coming together to support Chris Rabb. I think that I'd happily be on that train alongside Paul Rev, alongside Our Revolution, Sunrise Movement, Track APAC, Working Families Party, Peace Action, the CPC, DSA, and so much more.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned the three kind of Democrats that you see these days, right? And I think leftist is more akin to Chris Rabb when you look at his platform. He is DSA endorsed, he is WFP endorsed, he is also endorsed by most of the progressive squad, as you call them, in Congress. But not so much do we have a Pete Buttigieg sticking his head in this race, right? Um, or anybody in Pennsylvania, rather, that would actually be closer to this. But he has been a representative for 5 years already, and this proof of policy is another way of showing electability in a race, right? When you're implementing changes in your district where people are actually benefiting, the education is there for free, essentially. People are seeing the benefits of what is already being enacted. So, his voting record speaks for itself. And we're talking about how that looks in the grand scheme of where the progressive wave is actually changing policy for the betterment of the constituents. So that's Chris Rabb. I'm not going to harp on his platform any more than I would Bob's, because it's the same. We see a lot of the same principles, and we see a lot of the authenticity, and that is what's key to ensuring that we are endorsing in the right ways for helping a candidate win their race.
Yeah. And just to be clear, 5051 doesn't, at least on the national level, doesn't currently endorse candidates. Now, local and state 5051s have the freedom to and can do. And when it comes to national, I don't know if they can or can't, but they don't currently. But what they do have is a thing called the Rising Star Program, which is where candidates, especially grassroots candidates, can come to us. We vet them. We have them meet with our team, figure out where our policies and priorities align, see how they align with the local chapter, and then based off that, uplift them and point people in their direction, saying, "Hey, this person's running. This is really interesting." Providing a bit of like a boost, you could say, like an uplift or support or a boost. It's not a formal endorsement, but if you or anyone you know is running for office, or you know Chris Rabb or Bob Brooks personally, because I would really like those two to be on the list. I know they don't have a lot of time. You can email press@5050.1 and reach out about the Rising Star program. Today, I interviewed a candidate from Connecticut 3 as part of the vetting team. We have like 5 or 6 members. We're actually adding a couple more over the next week to help increase our capacity. But we've been doing this for a little bit, and we have a couple more interviews coming up this week with a number of candidates from different parts of the country, including a candidate in Kansas I'm pretty excited about, a candidate in Connecticut we just spoke to, and another Connecticut candidate. So if you know anyone, reach out at press@5050.1 and we'll see if they're a good fit for our Rising Star program. And also put them in contact with their local chapter if they're not already in contact to see if we can get them involved at that level. Actually, when we reached out to the Kansas candidate to our Kansas chapter, they're like, "Oh, we don't really know who that is." And then they read about her. They're like, "Oh, we're volunteering for her now." And I was like, "Whoa!" But like, it was cool to see that connection happen in real time. So, just like
It's
Paul
like
Rev's doing electoral work, it's not our main lane, but here we are talking about it. So we do what we can to help.
it's the bridge between anti-authoritarianism activism and progressive activism, which is what I've been in for my decade of work at organizing. But I think it's still tapping into what you're describing as that rising star aspect, right? Where you're seeing people step up and
Yeah,
actually do a run and actually try and do the thing that we should have done 10 years ago.
yeah, absolutely. So and the other thing I want to remind people is this is just 2026, right? We are seeing the beginning of a progressive wave, the beginning of a leftist wave, the beginning of the DSA WFP takeover of the Democratic Party. I'm joking when I say that mostly. I'm mostly joking when I say that. But like the beginning of like a real progressive, anti-fascist, anti-authoritarian wave in this party. The New Deal Dems. That's where the name comes from. Much like we saw a progressive wave during the Great Depression. We're seeing a similar wave start now. And this is just the first cycle. This is the 1930, not the 1932. This isn't the FDR election year. This is the year before. This is the cycle before. So if you think 2026 isn't enough for you, we're just getting started. And if you're already like, whoa, this is like really radical and progressive for me, I'm scared. Good luck, buddy. 2028 is going to be a hell of a ride for you. You think Chris Rabb and Bob Brooks is as far as it goes? Oh, you don't want to know what we're going to pull out of our hat in 2028. And I'm, for one, really excited to see what the People United can come up with, especially against Citizens United.
Yeah.
I believe Hieramius wants to highlight a upcoming primary that is going to happen next week, and then after that, let's loop back, make sure none of the results changed, and then close out the stream.
There's a primary in Louisiana where we're talking Republican primary, but the Senator Bill Cassidy is facing a competitive primary. For context, Cassidy was one Senate, 7 Senate Republicans who voted to impeach Donald Trump after January 6th. He is being challenged by Representative Julia Letlow. who has an enthusiastic endorsement from President Trump. In the latest polls, I see that Letlow currently has a plus 12 lead over Fleming, 42% to Fleming's 30%, and then Cassidy all the way down 20%. Not just that, but on May 19th is like so many primaries. You have Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, etc. But in Georgia, especially, there's an open governor's race this year. Brian Kemp is term limited, so he's not going to be around in 2027. So on the Democratic side, for example, we have Keisha Lance Bottoms, the former mayor of Atlanta, best known candidates amongst his slate, holds a strong primary lead in a few early polls. Right now, though, Bottoms is currently, according to my sources, New York Times, at a plus 29. So Bottoms is at 39%, Thurman is at 10%, and Esteve is at 8%. For example, Jeff Duncan, a former lieutenant governor who left the Republican Party over disagreements with Trump, is running as Democrat. Jason Estevez, a former state senator from Atlanta, is also running. But on the Republican side, you'll find something interesting because we mentioned Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, who defied Trump's call for I want to find 11,780 votes. He's running on the Republican side. He wants to be the governor of Georgia. He is currently being beat though by Jackson. And who is Jackson? Hold on 1 second because I have to search it out. But he keeps leading in many polls. The latest poll from Contest Insights from April 20th to May 2nd has Jackson at 27%, Jones at 22%, and Raffensperger at 14%. I searched up Rick Jackson, the guy who's currently leading, and his political career is a flip-flop. In the 2010s, he paid to promote unsuccessful overhaul of Georgia's medical malpractice claims. Then he gave $1 million to MAGA Inc., a super PAC who supports Donald Trump, in December 2025. But he donated to the Cheney's leadership PAC shortly after she voted to impeach Trump. He donated to Nikki Haley when she was running against Trump in 2024. But they're calling Jackson a rock-solid conservative, obviously a successful business person. That's what a activist, Eric Tenflat, said. So Jackson's a bit of a flip-flop, and if the primary goes Jackson's way, I don't know if either one will win. Very interesting situation there. Finally, and I want to say this very briefly, in the Senate, there's a challenge between hold on 1 second, because I did not cover much of the Senate side of the Georgia primaries. I was looking at the governor's part, but there's 3 candidates right now in the Republican primary. You have Collins, you have Dooley, and Carter. You have Derek Dooley, a former football coach. You have where's Carter? Blake Carter and Mike Collins, both of whom are pursuing Senate seats rather than trying to retain their spots in the House of Representatives. Trump's not made an endorsement yet, but Collins is plus 10 right now. Collins at 33%, Dooley at 23%, Carter at 14%. On the Democrat side, it's John Ossoff currently leading by 52% to 43% for Carter. Carter being, I think I might have
leader.
Hold on. Yeah.
Is he the front runner for Republicans? Yeah.
Collins
that should go to Ossoff, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Ossoff is out there. The Bernie Warren Biden thing is interesting because Ossoff probably started more on the Bernie side of the political party when he first got elected, but he has steadily jumped to very beginning, even if anything more than before he ran, because I'd say he was already on the left flank of that / the right flank on Warren. But over the past couple of years, we've seen the Ossoffication of the Georgia Democratic Party and the Ossoffication of Ossoff himself. In this case, I would describe him as he's gotten buffer and more charged with his rhetoric. He's since shifted pretty heavily into the Warren camp, if not even starting to touch up against the edges of the Bernie camp. So you're starting to see a lot of interest and support of him as an alternative if we don't get like a real leftist running, like getting him as like a progressive who will do what needs to be done in 2029. So there's some real general election presidential buzz if he can win the general in Georgia and keep his seat this year. So Georgia
I
is really
thought,
interesting for a couple reasons.
yeah, no, with what Stacey Abrams and John Oss, I've always wanted to say this on a news stream, but he got everyone off their ass or whatever to get out in freaking Georgia, you know?
He cut them off their ass off. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I
That's
feel
really
like just is gonna be angry at us soon.
I actually will say there not maybe not the most surprising thing, but I should also note that Ross Baraka has won has won the Newark mayor race in New Jersey again, 70% to 16.7 and 4.7%. So he has pretty clearly won today. Nonetheless, that's sort of like the
Oh,
largest
that's
race
great.
outside of Nebraska and West Virginia. I believe Baraka was charged by
Yes.
yes, he was. He was charged
Yeah, he tried
for
to enter a warehouse, I believe, whose house ICE was using.
That's
yeah.
right.
Well, we've had a lot of rough news over the past couple days with elections due to voter suppression, the Voting Rights Act being gutted. However, it is still good to see in so many states across the country, what with and Nebraska and West Virginia today, and also in Newark, New Jersey, and I believe in North Carolina there was runoff elections happening today after their primary, but not very many major races happening today in North Carolina. Nonetheless, it is good to see a robust democracy functioning, at least for one day, compared to the hellhole of disaster that our country's voting systems have fallen into after the Supreme Court decided that they wanted to wear their white hoods in public a little bit more than they already could.
Mm.
Oh, I'm just checking back on the results from West Virginia House District 2 is still closed. There's only 900 votes left. 98.1% of the votes are in, and it's still like it's still close. Again, we're probably not gonna hear much about it. We're probably not gonna hear like firm results until later. So, but everywhere else is
Did you
like
say West Virginia or Nebraska?
yeah, West Virginia House District 2 Democratic primary. It's a
Yeah.
mouthful. But like
Yeah, it looks
98
like it got even closer.
yeah. Um I mean with 98.1% of the vote in, I mean that's as good as you can get in terms of election results.
Am I losing? Hold on. Am I completely? Where is the? Just trying to fact check myself on some of the because it's also good to cover what are the upcoming races next week because we have a large number of. Where is
Uh
the North?
we have primaries in Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, Kentucky, I believe Oregon and Pennsylvania. There's primary races for governor in Alabama, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and there's key Senate races in Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky. Um, yeah, Alabama has their governor's race. Georgia has a governor's race and the Senate race. Kentucky has their Senate race. Pennsylvania has a governor's race. Doesn't really show for Idaho or Oregon, but I reckon it might be somewhere.
Yeah. We are going to see some. What is happening here? Yeah. We are going to see sort of a Super Tuesday tomorrow when it comes to primaries between Pennsylvania, Oregon, and a whole lot more. There's going to be some really interesting races heating up, and especially those Paul Rev candidates slash broad appeal candidates, Bob Brooks and Chris Rabb. Let's see if some Bernies can pull some wins out from some Warrens while, not handing it to more Bidens. Although, maybe 20 years younger Biden wouldn't be the worst thing ever. There's certainly worse options. Josh Shapiro.
A little more alive. Yeah, I wanted to just, I think this is going to definitely be something that gets more contentious as the general obviously comes around. But as these primaries unfold, we're going to, start highlighting some of the key indicators of that progressive wave that we've been talking about throughout the night, right? And I think it's only going to pick up as we see these primaries go on. So yeah, looking forward to covering all of these districts and seeing what the trends are going to be looking like. Because this reminds me a lot of what the temperature was like in 2016, between the Bernies and the Hillarys and their supporters, right?
Yeah.
And it does feel good to know that this argument is finally having credence when, um, we just uncovered that surface back in 2016. So
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing, if anything, I'd compare this, and I know it's not a perfect comparison because the Republican Tea Party movement was astroturf to shit, and this is much more organic by comparison. But
right.
we are having a Democratic Tea Party moment, the beginning of one. Now, of course, the Tea Party sucked and wasn't real and was getting funded by far right billionaires, but nonetheless, it won. So
Mhm.
one of the reasons why New Deal to Dems is such a nice term, I think, is because it's a good way of talking about a new wave of democratic progressivism that isn't just it's the Tea Party again. Well, like, look, believe me, if I had the budget of a billionaire, I would be doing things you couldn't even dream of, and so would Karsh, and so would Haramis, and so would Lilith. If we had that kind of dark money funding, we would have so much fun. But would it surprise you to know that billionaires don't like the anti-billionaire politics that we're espousing? Would be really shocking that the only guys who remotely are okay with it is Pritzker and Steyer, and they're too busy trying to, run for office to give us money. So it's just us out here making fun of them with $5 and a brute-strapped Stereophone mic. So anywho, before we head off, I do want to make sure we're hitting on those calls to action one more time. Obviously, if you haven't registered to vote, go to vote.org and it can help you register in your state. Make sure to like, subscribe, and if possible, gift a subscription to us here at the 5051 movement. I was informed just now that we have reached 350 followers. And before we go, Lilith, who is still here, can you give a quick summary again of what needs to be done for Louisiana?
Yes, please find that website that was in the chat and look at the locations available to sign the recall for Jeff Landry in person, and you have to make sure your voter status is active. And you have to sign the petition, and it is due on October 31st, and we need about half the amount, which is total is 500,000. We need about half.
Yeah. So we are over halfway to a Landry recall. So make sure to go online and sign your name if you were a registered voter in the state of Louisiana. Because I don't think I can put my name on there. I don't think that will count.
No, it also has to be in person.
Okay. Then go to your nearest polling place or place that you can go sign up for and go sign up for the Landry recall. Why does it have to be in person? That's crazy.
I don't know, but fun fact, Senate session is still going on, and it's almost 11 o'clock because there's so many testimonies to hear about the redistricting map.
Make sure that they never sleep again, so that they don't remember how to hit the right button. Because they don't have Randy Fine in the room; he can't just hit all the buttons for them. So maybe you get a good situation where they all hit the wrong button, and then 50% of them hit the blue button instead of the red button, and then yay, humanity saved. But also the blackpowerwarroom.com day of action / number register. That should be in the chat any moment. That is one of the links for the All Roads Lead South National Weekend of Action. There are some actions happening in Florida and other states across the country. And then on Saturday, folks are converging in Alabama, in Selma and Montgomery. for the Faith Leader Union coming together, and then also for the rally at 1 p.m. in Montgomery. So no matter where you are, try to find an action near you, or try to make your way down to Alabama and stand up for the rights of every American, because we don't stand up for the rights of our fellow American, there won't be anyone left to stand up for our rights when Peter Thiel, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, or whatever billionaire stooge tries to take away your rights and throws you in a camp. There'll be no one left to speak for you and stop them, which is why we all have to stand up together and help build a better future, build a better tomorrow for all of us. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Well, it's 11:45, so I believe now is a good time to end it. Thank you very much for joining us.
Bye, y'all.
See you guys.
I can remember I always wanted to be a gangster.